let's step inside. This is Volume 1 of Genesis. Hey guys, welcome to my beautiful hometown of Las Vegas. My name is Andre Jick, and I'd like to introduce you to the first volume of Genesis. Inside this volume, you'll learn the basics, or the essentials, to help you get started in this art form we call cardistry. Now, in addition to that, you'll also learn original moves for myself and other guest artists as well. So, I can't wait to show you what we have in store for you. This is Volume 1 of Genesis. Let's step inside. Alright, so welcome back to my little home studio. Now, before I show you anything, I want to quickly cover the mechanics grip. The mechanics grip is how we hold a deck of cards. Now, this grip is very important because 99% of moves originate from this grip. So it's something that you're going to have to get used to, and it may be awkward a little bit, but within a few minutes you'll get used to it. So here's what it looks like. You're going to hold the deck like this. Don't worry about the close-ups. I'll show you the close-ups in a few seconds. Your index finger is going to be placed on top of the short edge, your thumb on the long edge, and your middle ring and pinky fingers on the opposite long edge of the deck. Now, if you write with your right hand, which you probably do, you want to hold the deck in your left hand. And if you write with your left hand, then you want to hold the deck in your right hand. And I'm not sure why it works that way, but cardistry and magic just kind of reverse everything, okay? So it's something that you might have to get used to. So that was the mechanics grip. Let me quickly show you a few close-ups, and we'll move right along and learn all the other moves. Let's get into it. The deck is held in a loose fashion with your thumb on the right side of the long edge of the deck, your index on the top short edge of the deck, and your middle ring and pinky on the other long side of the deck. So here is the grip. Let's move on. Alright, so here we go with the Charlier cut. The Charlier cut is a classic move that's probably been around for at least 100 years. Now, besides being a simple one-handed cut, it's actually the point of origin, or the most basic and most simple form of cardistry that we know. Now, this is a very important concept to understand. This is more than just a tool, because once you get more advanced into cardistry, you'll probably not use the Charlier cut so much because it's so simple and it's so basic. But aside from being sort of the grandfather of all one-handed cuts, because this little action, this little rising action, is something that probably 90% of other original cuts use, and that's something that a lot of people don't understand, that your moves are probably based on it. So it is the point of origin. Now, besides being that, it's also a great tool for you to use in your performances, because you can actually demonstrate this. You can actually bring someone on stage and show them the basic one-handed cut, the simplest form of cardistry that we know of today. So you show them the Charlier cut, and you want to do a very good job in order for them to succeed and actually, do the Charlier cut. They'll have trouble with it, they'll struggle through it, but at least that will dispel their notion of you having too much time on your hands, and they'll actually begin to understand that cardistry is very difficult. Because if you're a good performer, you'll come off as, oh, that stuff looks easy, because he makes it look easy. But that's not what you want. You want to make cardistry look very difficult, because let's face it, it really is difficult, and that's something that you want your audience to understand. So this is a great tool to do that. A little gag with this is, if it's your first time learning the Charlier cut, which it might be, it's something that you'll probably be complaining about as well, that your thumb is too short or too small, your hands are too small, and your audience are likely to make that same excuse. So a great little gag is to pull out a miniature deck, like a mini deck, and then give it to them, and it gets a laugh. So it's audience participation and it's audience involvement, which is something that any performer can relate to and would probably want to put in his repertoire par. So cardistry is no different. So again, the Charlier cut is more than just a simple move that, you can show off to your audience. It's also a tool in order for your audience to understand that and appreciate cardistry as a whole. Okay, so that's something I use it for as well. Alright, so with that said, I apologize for the extremely long introduction. Let's just get right into it. Alright, so you're going to start off in mechanics grip. Your pinky is going to go on the opposite side of where your index finger is. What that'll allow you to do is prop the deck up and reposition it. This will be your get ready for the Charlier execution. Now what you're going to do is, with your index finger, drop about half the cards onto your palm. Remember to keep your pinky on that opposite edge so that the cards won't fall down onto the floor. Your pinky is just going to prop this packet right up, and you can release the top packet, and you see it balances sort of like a T. Now you're just going to keep rising, keep pushing up, 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 until this packet clears, and then you're just going to drop and square up. Okay, so let me give you that one more time. Starting in mechanics grip, pinky on the opposite side, prop up, thumb on the opposite long edge of the deck. Your index finger is just going to drop about half the pack. It's going to push up, all the while pinky is on the opposite side. Let go, balance, keep pushing until you clear that packet, drop, and close. Alright, so now we're done with the Charlier cut. If you can't seem to get it, you're probably very discouraged at this point, and you're thinking, well, this is such a basic cut, and I still can't do it, so I'm probably not very talented. And the thing I have to say about that is, don't give up, because the most difficult part in any art form, whether it be gymnastics, magic, breakdancing, cardistry, whatever it is, the hardest part is the beginning. That's when your dedication to the art will be tested. Because if you can get through this with practice, and I promise you, you will, if you can't seem to get it still, just give it a little bit more time, and eventually you'll get used to the grips, the fluidity, just everything will come with time. So don't give up, and it's not something that you're going to have talent for at all, because it's just all practice and time. So please don't give up, just give it some time, and you'll be doing this fairly quickly, okay? So that was the Charlier cut. I hope you guys enjoyed it and realized the infinite potential of it. Alright, so here's the thumb cut. The thumb cut is another one of those foundational one-handed cuts that I think everybody should know how to do. And this is one of those moves that looks kind of simple, but you'll be surprised how many people will be making the excuse that their thumb is too small and can't reach around to the other side of the deck. However, don't be alarmed. Together, we'll tackle this problem and solve it. So let's step inside and learn the thumb cut. Here we go with the thumb cut. You're going to reposition the deck like we did with the Charlier cut. Exactly the same. Now, instead of reaching around with your thumb, because you can tell my thumb is way too short. I can't reach around to grab even 10 cards. But the way that we fix this is instead of reaching for the deck is going to reach for the thumb. So it's going to look like that. And as you can see, I have safely gripped the deck, and it's not going anywhere. Okay? And that's because of the technique of raising the deck onto the thumb. So essentially, here's how you do it. You're going to reposition. The deck just sort of falls. And remember, the initial grip should be farthest away from your thumb. Notice it's not here. It's all the way out there. So my thumb is really extended out there. So what happens is the deck is sort of pushed up. Your index and your pinky can let go from the sides, and your index finger is just going to push the deck up. So all I'm doing is just levering it onto my thumb. Okay? So I just pushed it against my thumb. So essentially, again, it's a combination of both pushing up and then reaching with your thumb. It's a little bit of both. Once you've done that, you'll notice that you have some excess. Now you can either come over with your middle finger to grab to the top, or if your middle finger is too short or you can't do it for first time trying, you can always let the pack fall. Okay, and that's also another way of doing it. So if you feel lazy, you can just let the packet fall. Okay, once you've done that, you can curl all your other fingers underneath and extend this packet out. So your middle finger is just going to uncurl. So all I'm doing is uncurling, and we're here. Now again, this is also a very secure grip. You can notice that my thumb pack is very tightly gripped, and my outer packet is also very tightly gripped. My middle finger is pushing down, while my other fingers are pushing out, and they're all extended. Now what's going to happen from here is you're going to let the thumb packet fall, and then you're going to close or curl again your middle finger. So it's just going to place this top packet back on top of the deck. Your thumb comes over to the top and grabs it. Okay? So one more time. Reposition. The deck is furthest away from your thumb. The deck is levered with your index finger. It's going to be grabbed by the thumb. Middle finger comes over or lets the packet fall. Okay? Ring, pinky, and index finger are curled underneath, and they push out. So they're just going to push out. So you push that packet outward, let the thumb packet fall, and then close the outer packet back on top. And that is essentially the thumb cut. Let me give you a few more angles. So here it is again for the thumb cut. You're going to reposition the deck farthest away from your thumb. The deck falls. Index finger pushes the deck onto your thumb. The excess falls to the palm. Middle finger grips on top. And your pinky, ring, and index finger are curled underneath. And they're just going to uncurl. So you're uncurling it. We're in this secure position. Your thumb packet is just going to fall. And as it does, your middle finger curls back in. Thumb comes over and places the packet back on top. So that's it for the thumb cut. Alright, so that was the thumb cut. I hope you guys enjoyed it. This one is slightly harder than the Charlier cut because grabbing the deck with the thumb is very difficult. But remember the tips I gave you. Try to start with the deck as far away from the thumb as possible. That will let your fingers do all the work and prop the deck onto the thumb instead of the thumb reaching around to grab the deck. So remember to add your own style and your own flair. For example, you don't have to just execute the move like that. you can rotate your hands as you're doing it, okay? So, more like that. Or you can do it the way Huron Low does it, which is the way I love doing it. It's just really cool. And the way he does it is he does one, he extends his hands, he turns his hand over, he does it with the other one, and then he does it with both. And it looks really, really cool when done in full speed. So I'd like to thank him for that. So either use what you've got or what you've seen, and let's move on to the scissor cut. Alright, so the scissor cut. The scissor cut is one of those foundational one-handed cuts that I think everybody should know as well. Now, you can really go crazy with this one. It's very versatile, much like the Charlier cut. And being that it is, you'll of course find many people complaining that their hand size is too small and that's why they're not able to clear the packets. However, I'm going to help you remedy and solve those problems right now. So let's get started. Alright, so we're going to start off in the mechanic's grip. Our pinky is going to go to the opposite edge, and the deck will be propped up as far away from the thumb as possible, just like the thumb cut and the Charlier cut. Now our thumb is going to go to the opposite short edge of the deck. It's going to go on the opposite side where the index finger is. So we're going to go to this corner right there. Now instead of rippling off, you're just going to insert your thumb right inside on the short edge. So the short edge and the thumb is going to contact together. Alright? Now you're just going to pivot around your index finger, and this thumb is just going to pivot right around and around and around until this packet clears. See that? It cleared. This will let me replace the packet back onto the bottom and square the deck. Now a lot more goes on to it than it looks, because it looks like my thumb and my index finger packet are just rotating around. However, that's not all that happens. In fact, there are two other key elements that go into this that let me clear the bottom packet. And here's what they are. Now from here, you can insert your thumb, and as you rotate, notice that the bottom packet also rotates on itself. So the pinky and the index finger are rotating around the opposite way as the thumb and the index pinky packet rotate the other way. So they're kind of, moving away from each other together. Right? So that's one of them. The other thing is, after I get to about here, my ring and middle finger come into play. And this is one of the most overlooked factors when learning the scissor cut, because as you're here, when you can't clear anymore, what happens is your ring and your middle finger push down on this packet. So I'm going to execute it for you so you can see a little bit what I mean. So when I'm here, about there, my middle and my ring finger actually push down on this packet. So you notice how this packet went from flat to about there. And that helped me clear the edge. So again, insert your thumb inside, pivot around. These packets counter rotate from each other. And then these two fingers sort of prop that bottom packet up. There, see that? And it just clears and replaces back. Alright, so one more time. The thumb goes onto the opposite short edge. The packets rotate around each other. The two fingers press down and lever that packet right up, allowing me to clear it and replace it back to the bottom. So let me give you another angle for that. Alright, so again, mechanic's grip. Pinky props the deck up. Thumb goes in. The packet rotates around. Both of them rotate around. Two fingers press down, and that lets me clear and replace back on top. So now we're there. Okay? So again, prop up, thumb goes here, both packets rotate on each other, two fingers press down, helps me clear, press down, and we're good to go. Alright, so that was the scissor cut. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Personally, I think it's a little bit harder than the thumb cut and the Charlier cut. However, with those two tips I gave you, just remember that the two packets rotate on each other, and it's not just one top packet that's rotating around. Also remember that your middle and your ring finger also put pressure on the bottom packet, so that's what helps you clear it. Now, unless you have a thumb that's like a foot long and you're a mutant, you won't be able to do this cut unless you clear that packet. So I hope those two tips helped you. Now, with that said, let's move right along. Alright, so this is the revolution cut. Now, I believe Brian Tudor first came up with it. However, multiple sources say that someone else has, but I'm not quite too sure on that. I do know that Dan and Dave Buck have popularized the revolution cut somewhere between the 2003 and 2005 time frame, and they're still popular to this day. And I believe that they're important to your infrastructure and your understanding of cardistry. So let's get to learning the revolution cut. So let's learn the revolution cut. You're going to start out mechanics grip. You're going to reposition the deck like we did with the Charlier cut. You're going to drop half the deck with your index finger. And you're going to re-grip both of these packets using your thumb and your index finger. So your middle ring and pinky can just float loose, okay? So your thumb is going to pivot the top packet away from you around the index finger. So I'm just doing this. I'm pivoting it away. Your ring finger, as you pivot around, is going to come around to where the thumb is, and it's going to practically touch. Now, when you first do this move, you won't have the sufficient flexibility to reach around, but don't worry, with time and practice, you'll easily be able to grab it. So now I'm holding the packet with just my ring and index fingers, okay? So you're just going to keep rotating this packet around and around until it falls, okay? And the only two, or actually three fingers from this point on, the only three fingers you use are the ring finger, the index finger, and your thumb. Your middle and pinky never come into play the entire way around, okay? Watch, from here you can even see my middle finger is not touching the deck at all during the entire revolution. So all I'm using is my thumb, pinky, and index fingers. So one more time, drop half the deck, reposition, ring finger comes around as the packet is pivoted away from you. It's just going to rotate, let the packet fall, and close. So that's pretty much it. Again, with time, you'll be able to build speed and flexibility. And at first, you'll have a difficult time reaching around with your ring finger. But no worries. Again, time will fix that. So let me give you a few more angles. Alright, so that's it on the revolution cut. Like with everything else, at first you'll be doing it slow and quite sloppy, but with time you'll build it up. So like anything else, just practice and eventually you'll get it, and speed will come naturally. So practice that, and that is the revolution cut. Alright, so this is the basic angel. The angel concept was originally invented by Bone Ho. Now the reason I'm teaching you this move is because some of my moves utilize just the basic angel display to get into certain things, such as the angel slide and the angel catch. So I'd just like to go over it briefly, and I'd like to give special thanks to Bone Ho for inventing this amazing move, an amazing concept. So let's get right into it right now. Alright, so let me give you a brief overview of the basic angel. What happens is you start out in mechanic's grip, place your thumb on top, and balance one card over like so, and close. So that's pretty much all that happens in this basic little display. Let me give you a more detailed explanation of what goes on. So you're going to start off in mechanic's grip. Place your thumb right in the center of the card, and apply pressure, down pressure. As you turn your hand over, you're just going to balance this one card on your thumb as you turn your hand back around. And that is the basic angel display. To close it, you're just going to let your thumb go right down back onto the deck. And that's pretty much it. Alright, so that was the basic angel display. I hope you guys liked it. Now, for me, I have very sweaty hands, so to me, this move is no problem. For other people, I see a balancing issue, so that's pretty much what you have to practice if you don't have moisty hands. But to me, check this out. Yeah, it's that bad. So, no problem for me, it may be a problem for you. However, to remedy this, just remember to practice holding your hand down and rotate around as you're doing that. Just be careful not to let the card fall, and remember to place your thumb right in the center. Now, I didn't fully cover this whole concept in general because I feel that it is up to Bone Ho, the creator of this concept, to sort of teach you guys when he comes out with his own material. So I'd like to give special thanks to him, and I hope you guys enjoyed this move. Alright, so this is the basic width-wise triangle. What it is just the basic formation of a one-handed triangle move, and it utilizes the Charlier cut to accomplish it. So with that said, let's get into it right now. Alright, so starting in mechanic's grip, we're going to reposition the deck just as we always have. Pinky on the opposite side, and just reposition it as far away from you as possible. Now essentially what we're going to do is a Charlier cut, except here we're going to drop off about a third of the deck down onto the palm. Now our index finger is just going to lever this packet up, and you're going to essentially execute the Charlier cut, except you're not going to sort of clear the packet. You're not going to complete the cut. See that right there? What happens is you're just going to push this wall and clear these two edges over here. Now what this does is this will split the top packet into two, and this bottom edge will fall, creating the triangle. So watch the clearing action. I'm just going to push and let that packet fall. See that? Like that. That's all that happens. So let me go over that again. Starting in mechanic's grip, reposition as far away as possible, drop a third of the deck down. You're going to execute a half Charlier cut, except instead of completing the cut, you're just going to press right on top of here, letting this top packet sort of clear. You see it's cleared? It's just going to fall. So So remember the edge is important right here. Okay, so to collapse the triangle, all you're going to do is just collapse the two sides and close. That's pretty much it. So let me show you that again. Starting from mechanic's grip, reposition, drop a third, push up, clear, and you're here. And that's the basic triangle. To close, let the thumb pull the thumb away, and this packet is going to collapse down, followed by this packet. So in real speed, it's going to look like this. Okay, so that's pretty much it. Alright, so that was the comprehensive guide on how to make a triangle. Now remember, there are probably an infinite amount of ways to make a triangle, and this was just one of the basic ways to do it. Remember to add your own style and your own flair to it. Now, adding your own style and flair does not mean flailing your arms in front of the camera. Style and personality is sort of something that makes sense and looks pretty and beautiful in front of the audience. So with that said, let's move on. Alright, so the lengthwise triangle. The lengthwise triangle is a little bit different from the widthwise triangle, as you've noticed. It takes two hands to set up, and there are certain things you can do with it that you otherwise couldn't with the widthwise triangle. So this is why I'm teaching you it. It sort of provides a better foundation and an understanding of the basic moves, so I thought it was beneficial enough to include it on this section of the DVD. So I hope you guys enjoyed it, and let's get right into the lengthwise triangle. Alright, so starting in mechanic's grip, what you're going to do is make the Z grip. Now, how I did that was using your middle finger and your thumb, you're just going to prop a third of the deck up like that. Now, using your thumb, you're just going to lever the center packet right up against the index finger, thus creating the Z, like that. Now, from here, you're just going to grip this center packet with your thumb and your middle finger. So you're left in this position. Now, you're just going to slide the top packet on down to complete the last side of the triangle. Now from this point, the triangle is only held by three fingers, and they are the index finger, the thumb, and the middle finger. This allows us to move the triangle freely as we wish. Now to collapse the triangle, what you're going to do is collapse the packet farthest away from us. So you're just going to move the packet closest to you away, and it's going to collapse that packet. Now your hand just turns over, placing the thumb on the face of the cards, and just rolling that last packet onto the deck. So we'll try that again. So for mechanic's grip, go into the Z grip, grip the center packet, slide the last one on down, and complete the triangle. Move as you freely wish, collapse the last packet, and roll over back onto the deck. And that's pretty much it. The cool thing to note is after you've collapsed the last packet and you're in this position, you'll notice that you can execute blink from this point on. So just execute blink and roll the last packet onto the deck. So in full speed, it looks something like that. Alright? Now with a little bit of style, we can make it look like this. And all I did was add some hand gestures and hand motions and made the move look a little bit more like something else, a little more like something more complex. I didn't just flail my hands in a way that didn't make sense, but it was in a way that sort of, gave you the impression that a lot more is going on. And that is exactly what style and flair is. So I wanted to give you a quick example of just that. Alright, so that was lengthwise triangle. I hope you guys liked it. There's not much to say about this move. Just do it smooth and add your own flair and style. Let's move on. Here comes the one-handed shuffle. It's basically a way to shuffle a deck of cards using just one hand, kind of like you see done in the casinos. This move dates back all the way to Di Vernon, who has illustrated it several times. This is one of those moves that is a lot harder than it looks. It looks very simple, but it's not. It's something that you're going to have to put a lot of time and energy into, okay? So let's not waste any time. Let's get right to learning the one-handed shuffle. Alright, so let's begin with the one-handed shuffle. Now, when you first start, you'll want to have a bend in the deck. And that's generally important for any move that you do, but especially for the one-handed shuffle. When you do the one-handed shuffle, you'll want to have the bend so that it's in a U. See that? See how the deck isn't perfectly straight, but instead it's sort of bent like this for an exaggerated view? Well, that's how you want it. This ensures that the interlace is perfect and the move happens without any sort of glitches or hiccups, okay? So when you first start out, you'll want to be in mechanic's grip and you'll want to turn the deck over to its correct position where the bevel is shaped like a U. You're going to reposition the deck like we did with the Charlier cut, so furthest away from your thumb. Remember to have that pinky on the short edge of the deck, that way it doesn't fall to the ground. What happens is your index finger is just going to split the deck into two. And it doesn't have to be perfect 26 for 26, but closer to it would be better. Now what happens is your hand is just going to open up. So your middle and ring fingers are going to spread apart while your thumb is also going to come apart from those two fingers. And essentially what that does is it separates these two packets. Now you'll want to have a bit of an index fingernail. Okay, because you'll want as least friction as possible to come between the finger and the packet. Because otherwise, if you didn't have a fingernail, this is what would happen. See how the card kind of goes along for the ride? But that's not what you want. You don't want the card to slide with it. Otherwise, the packets are never going to clear, and that's pretty much the death of the move. So be careful of that. You don't need vampire-length fingernails, but a little grown out would help. Okay, so again, reposition furthest away from your thumb. You're going to insert your index fingernail, and your hand is just going to open up. So as it does that, it's going to come up to the point where the index fingernail is sort of cleared. You see this first bend in the fingernail, or excuse me, in the finger? You'll want it to be right there. This is the level for which the two packets are held. Now what happens is, your middle finger is going to reposition to the short edge of the top, and your pinky can go from the short edge to the long edge, okay? Because you'll need the pressure from the pinky packet against the thumb packet to interlace the cards together. If it was on the short edge, you don't have any strength to pull these two packets together. So you want to have even strength from each packet. So we're here. You're just going to push the two packets together using your pinky and your thumb. So you just interlace them together, okay? So that's what happens. Now from here, your index finger gets out of the way, and you're going to square these two packets so that they're perfectly parallel with each other. See that? It went from here to from the V to the parallel packs, okay? And that's what you want. Your index finger comes back in, your middle finger comes to the corner of the packet that's furthest away from you, and you're just going to bevel this whole pack in sort of a U shape, okay? Now, the built-up pressure from your hand squeezing the deck into a U is what lets the cards sort of ripple together. You're just going to release with the index finger, and as you do, you're just going to open your hands up like that, okay? And as you do, the cards will ripple and come together, okay? You'll want to have a little bit of a style to it, so don't just shuffle it face up. You'll want to maybe do it behind your back, or maybe you can even turn your hand over as you do it, which is what I like to do. Now, if you'll notice, after we've completed the shuffle, if we do it from this position, you'll notice that a card likes to get stuck to your palm, to the top of your palm, and that's perfectly okay, because the way you're going to recover that is use your index finger to sort of push it down, okay? And when you do, it comes perfectly flat with the deck. You can turn your hand back around and square up, okay? So that's essentially the one-handed shuffle. Let me give you a few more angles for that. So that was it for the one-handed shuffle. Some things to keep in mind are make sure that your deck is bent and beveled prior to doing the move, and your index fingernail is trimmed. you'll want as least amount of friction between the finger and the packet, otherwise it's not going to clear. You're also going to want to apply pressure on both packets, especially with the pinky packet. It's what a lot of people forget, okay? And for the most part, though, it's just something that you're going to have to practice and put a lot of effort into, okay? And eventually you'll get it. So don't be afraid to try it out and get out there and do it. Anyway, that was the one-handed shuffle. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Alright, so let's learn the thumb propulsion. Now this move is also known as Jay's long distance spinner. Jay notes its description in the Tarbell Course of Magic, where it's attributed to Audley Walsh. Now another honorable mention who has attributed a lot to this move is a man by the name of Jeff McBride, who has used this move countless times in his live performances, where he flicks the card, it bounces against the stage and ricochets off into the audience, and it looks really neat. So with that said, let's get right to learning the thumb propulsion. Alright, so let's briefly cover the thumb propulsion. You're going to hold the deck in this fashion, and your thumb is just going to flick one card right out, and it's going to pivot around the index finger, and it's going to fly out, okay? So you can catch it on top of the deck, or you can catch it in your other hand. Now, this technique becomes essential for when we learn the card-in fans. So let's get right into it. Alright, so let's learn Jay's long distance spinner. Now you're going to start off in mechanic's grip, and the grip to get ready is sort of like the one-handed fan get ready position, except the only difference is your ring finger isn't on top of the short edge, it's going to be on the bottom of the long edge. So you're just gripping the deck with 3 fingers. The index finger here, the middle finger, and the ring finger on the bottom, okay? Now what happens is, behind the scenes, your thumb is going to come right where your ring finger is. You see that corner right there? Well, you want to get to it as close as possible. Now what happens is, you can see my fingernail is a little bit too long, but it still doesn't get in the way too much. You'll want to have it trimmed so that you'll want as much sort of friction as possible. So what's going to happen is your thumb is going to apply outward pressure. So you're just going to press on the deck, and you're just going to flick up. So your thumb just slips and flicks the card up. Now the card is going to flick in the air, and it's going to pivot around the index finger. So it's just going to shoot right up and pivot, okay? So what's going to happen is press, flick, and catch, okay? So that's what happens. Again, that's all essentially that happens. You're just pressing against the deck and then flicking it, okay? Now you can catch it back on top of the deck, or you can catch it into your other hand. Let me show you a few more angles. Alright, so here it is again. Index finger on the long edge, ring finger goes on the opposite long edge, middle finger pushes out, so the deck and the hand sort of create almost a 90-degree angle, alright? So they're adjacent to each other. Now your thumb goes right where your ring finger is, and it's going to push on that corner. It's going to build pressure, push forward, and flick up, alright? And sometimes you'll have to do this several times when first learning, due to maybe your hands are too moisty or because you have a longer fingernail, okay? So that's all natural. So you're just going to flick, build pressure, and flick up, okay? And that's it. You can also flick multiple cards out. Alright, and that's it. Alright, so this concludes Jay's long distance spinner. Now, if you're having trouble with flicking the card out, you can use a thumb tip because you want as much friction as possible. If you're still having trouble, or if you don't want to use a thumb tip, make sure to trim your thumb fingernail, as that will help. Moist hands will also help. Not too wet because that will cause the thumb to slip right off. So a little bit moisty, okay? Now remember, there are several ways to do this move. You can do it behind your back, off stage like Jeff McBride does it, or in this case we're doing it to learn the original card and fans. So this was Jay's long distance spinner, which is also known as the thumb propulsion, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. Alright, so here comes the spring. The spring has been around for hundreds of years, or at least 100. We're not quite sure who created it or where it originated from because it dates back to so long ago. Now what I am sure of is in telling you that the spring is probably the most difficult move you'll learn on this whole entire volume. And that's because there are so many little things that go into making a spring a successful one, such as the springing hand position, the catching hand grip, where both of your hands should be placed, the length of the spring, the timing, the style. There's a lot of little things that go into it. And I know it sounds very intimidated and complicated, but it's not as hard as I'm making it out to be, so don't be afraid, okay? Now, I'm going to try to show you every little technique and the advantages and disadvantages of each and every one of them and why things are the way they are. Now, in cardistry, there is no right and wrong way of doing it. There is no correct or incorrect way. So remember that. If you ever decide to take part in any community and someone tells you that you're incorrect or your method is wrong, don't listen to them, okay? Just keep doing what you're doing. There's only a method that you like doing. There's only the methods that you're comfortable with, okay? Now, there is a slight little problem with that if you apply that same thinking to the spring. That's because when I first learned the spring, I learned it incorrectly. I actually used the, and by the way, when I say incorrectly, I'm loosely using that term, okay? Now, I learned it with the short edge of the deck. And that was incorrect for me because I wanted to ultimately master the spring. And by mastering it, I mean I wanted to have the full length, the full control, the stability. And I found that the technique that I used when I first started learning it, because it was comfortable to me, didn't let me to go all the way. It limited me, okay? So I want to show you guys the correct way, or again, the way that's not going to limit you if you do decide to go all the way with it, if you do decide to master the spring, okay? So just keep those things in mind, and let's get right into the spring. Alright, so let me briefly cover the spring. Now, the way it works is the hand is going to build up pressure. It's not so much the fact that you're springing cards out of your hand. I mean, that's what goes on. But the reason that it happens is because you're building pressure with the deck, you're squeezing it, and you squeeze, squeeze, squeeze until you're ready and you built enough pressure that you let go with your thumb and you spring the cards out. So it's a result of building a lot of pressure, and then the cards give in and then they spring out, okay? So that's what makes it work. Now let me give you the details of how to actually do it, okay? Let's get into it. Alright, so now let's get into the spring. You're going to hold the deck in this position, and don't worry about if you can't see far away enough. I'm going to show you the close-ups later on, but for now, I'm going to show and cover the important and the fine points of the spring, okay? So you're going to hold the deck with your index, middle, ring, and pinky fingers on top of the short edge of the deck, okay? Your thumb is on the corner of the bottom. Now, when you first begin, remember when I was talking to you about simplifying techniques to make them easier? Well, the way you would simplify the spring when you first start is you would have your thumb on the short edge, not on the corner, but on the center of the short edge of the bottom. And that makes it a lot more easier to spring the cards out than the corner. And you'll see what I mean when first learning it, but please do not learn here. If you want to master it, ultimately, you'll want to do the corner grip. Now, what that does is, when you first begin, your springs aren't going to go straight down. Instead, they're going to come towards you. kind of like this, okay? They're not going to sound that great. They're actually going to sound like, they're going to be all over the place. And that's because of a lack of finger strength, but that goes away as you progress with it. But when we first start out, because the cards come to you in a diagonal position, what you'll want to do is use your chest or your stomach to catch the cards. And that's perfectly acceptable because we all learn it that way. No matter who's doing it, we've all learned that way, and it's perfectly okay. But if you want to get away from that, mastering this technique will solve that. Okay, so that's all part of it. Now, what happens is you're going to sort of squeeze the deck so it bends, and you're going to put enough pressure to where the cards want to give in. And as they do, and you'll feel when they want to come out, what happens is your thumb is just going to let go. It's not really letting go. I don't know why I said certainly. It's not letting go, but it's bending. It's unbending. And what that does is it sort of lets go every card one by one, okay? And as it does that, your hand sort of comes together and squeezes the deck together, okay? But you're going to have to do it in such a way that the pressure has to be consistent throughout the whole time you're springing. By that I mean, when we first start the spring, prior to actually springing the cards out, you'll notice that you have to put a lot more pressure because it's the full deck, okay? So obviously you'll need to have more pressure inside. But as the cards spring out, because you have less cards, you'll want to let go a little bit. The pressure has to release. That's because, again, the less cards you have, the less pressure you'll want to put, okay? So, again, remember to have that consistent pressure, and that's something that you'll learn over time on how to compensate for that. Okay, so now let's get into the catching hand. The catching hand is going to look sort of like this, okay? It kind of looks like a retarded claw of an eagle, okay? What that does is sort of acts like a cage for the cards to fall on. Get it? Like a cage for the bird? No, basically, what this looks like is your pinky is sticking right up and your index finger is curled right there. Now, what that does is it acts as a backboard for the cards to fall on when they spring, okay? Because without it, again, you'll be doing the tummy thing. And that's, again, perfectly fine. But if you want to get away from that, the way to stop that is use your pinky sticking straight up. Your index finger is going to be slightly curled in, and your thumb is going to be right there, and those two fingers are just here. They're just loose. So what's going to happen is you're going to spring and catch, and your pinky and index finger are just going to come together, and your hand is going to close up. You're going to close that cage, and it squares the packet up. Now, ultimately, when you master the spring, you'll want to catch each card, not perfectly, but you don't want to be doing the squaring up action. I mean, a little bit of that can go on, but ultimately, you'll want the deck to sort of land, somewhat squared, okay? All right, so I want to discuss a few other little grips or ways of doing it. There's another way of doing the spring where you're using essentially the same technique, except your pinky is out there. So instead of your pinky being on the corner, your ring finger is going to be on the corner of the deck. And that's okay. But the reason I don't do it that way is because it doesn't give you as much control as the pinky grip does, okay? Because when your pinky is floating around, obviously your ring finger has a lot more strength inside of it than the pinky finger, but you don't want more strength. You want just enough so that your spring is going to be perfectly, the strength is going to be distributed. And I believe that the ring finger introduces a little bit more than you need to, okay? But the upside to this is it looks cooler, okay? I mean, come on, it looks kind of like sipping a drink. Everybody does it, okay? With the pinky, it looks cool, but it does not, it does not give you the full control. And I know the verts do it, and I do it sometimes too, because for the spring, you can get away with it. But remember, to master a move is more than just to do the basic version of it. To master a technique, you have to do more advanced versions of it, such as the overhead spring, which is a little bit more complicated. And it's going to be much harder to do it with the ring finger. Because I found that watching people who spring with the ring finger on the corner, their cards don't fall almost completely flat. They're bent in sort of a weird shape, okay? And that's okay, but when you do the overhead spring, you're complicating it for yourself, and it makes it harder, and why would you do that, okay? So stick to the simple things, and again, for the spring, yeah, you can get away with it, but to prove my point that this is true, if you keep going down the line with the fingers, and the more you get rid of the fingers, you'll notice that, I mean, you can have just enough strength with the fingers, that's fine, but you'll lose control with, you know, I'll over-exaggerate. I mean, if I use my middle finger, that's still okay, but then you use your index finger and the control, you kind of lose it. So don't complicate it for yourself, just stick with the pinky method, okay? Now, let me show you a few more close-ups and different angles so you guys can better understand it, alright? Alright, so we finally made it through the spring season. You want to use the short edge, I'm going to kill myself, the corner grip method, because I guarantee you that eventually you'll want to master the move. You'll want to bring it up to its full potential and full capacity, full length, okay? And the short edge method is not going to do that for you. The spring is one of those moves that you're going to have to practice a lot. You're going to give up, you're going to come back to it, and that's perfectly okay. Just don't give up on it completely. Practice this move over a table or a bed, somewhere where you don't have to pick the cards up all over again, because that's probably why generally people quit, because it does get annoying to pick up 52 cards off the floor. So again, do it somewhere where you don't have to do that, okay? And at first, your springs are going to look ugly, they're going to sound ugly, they're going to be short, and it's okay, because with practice, all that will go away. So let me show you the difference between short edge method and the corner grip in terms of sound, okay? So here comes the short edge method. Hear how rough it is. Watch. You hear how it's very rough? It's like, that's not what you want. You'll want to use the short edge method, or excuse me, I want to kill myself again, the corner grip, because it's very, very quiet, okay? Like that. It's very, very quiet. That's what you want, alright? So that was the spring. It's one of my favorite moves to do. It's very visual, so don't give up on it. That was the spring. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Alright, so welcome to the fanning section. I want to be honest with you. Fanning is very difficult. It is the most difficult genre in cardistry. And that's because it looks like one of those things where you can, learn in a few minutes. It looks like you pick up a deck of cards, you just spread it, and voila. It's a beautiful fan. And that's not the case. It's something that's going to take a lot of time, and, it's one thing to learn how to fan, and it's a whole different animal to actually master it. It's also very difficult to teach how to fan. And that's because I can give you too much information, and I can talk about hours and hours about how to fan a deck of cards, but at the end of the day, I'd probably be saying the same thing 10,000 different ways. So I don't want to do that. After a certain point, it's something that you're going to have to practice. And I guarantee you, when you practice, you're not going to get it. You're going to mess it up a million times. Don't worry about that. That happens to everybody, and it's not because you don't have the necessary foundational knowledge to make a fan. It's simply because lack of practice, okay? So before you go and ask questions and read different articles about how to fan, just remember that you just need to practice, as we all have. So I hope none of this is too intimidating, and with that said, let's get right to learning how to fan a deck of cards. Here comes the flower fan. The flower fan was published in Jerry's Encyclopedia of Playing Card Flourishes. It was also published in Jeff McBride's Art of Card Manipulation, Volume 3. He calls it the Rolo deck. Now, the flower fan is one of those moves that is very overlooked. Not a lot of people know it exists, but it's one of those versatile fans that surprises me that a lot of people don't use it. It's a very cool application, and I think it's important enough to have in your arsenal. Okay? It's a foundational technique that you'll have to know in order to do other things, okay? So let's get into the flower fan. Alright, so this is the get ready for the flower fan, this position. So I'm holding the deck with my index finger, middle finger, and my ring finger sort of resting on the short edge right here, and my thumb on the opposite long edge of the deck. Now what happens is, you're going to use your ring finger, your middle finger, and your index finger and your thumb to sort of spring the cards off. Now before you spring the cards off, you want to tilt the deck towards the crotch of your hand right there. See that? This will give you a much larger and much more round fan for when you actually spring the cards out. Now as you tilt, you bevel the deck and you sort of put pressure on it, and it creates an upside down U. Okay? So it creates kind of like a rainbow. So as you move the cards right along towards the crotch of your hand, you're going to spring the cards and move the deck as a unit. So what happens is you spring, spring, spring as you move the deck. Okay? So again, it's sort of like a spring, but done on the side. So essentially, this is what you're doing from the side. A good thing to note is that the deck I'm using is very, very old. So it's very, very soft to do. Don't even bother trying to do this fan with a new deck because it's not going to work. Okay, so let me show you this slow. So my fan's going to look really horrible, but so you can understand what I'm doing. What happens is you tilt the deck towards yourself, and you're just going to spring the cards right out. Okay, like that. So that's all that happens. Now make sure to apply some pressure with your thumb and your other fingers, because otherwise if you let loose, your cards are going to start to open up because there's not enough pressure, and that's not what you want. Okay? Now to close the fan, or what's left of the fan, you're going to bring your hand and you're just going to sort of push these cards right along and close it. Okay? So one more time. Hold it in this position right here. The three fingers on the long edge and the thumb on the opposite edge. As you move and tilt the deck towards, away from you, you're going to spring as you move the deck. Okay? So, like that. One more time, so you guys can see. Right? So doing it slow and in full speed, sort of looks like that. Okay? And that's the flower fan. Alright, so that was the flower fan. Make sure that when you first learn it to use a soft deck. If you use a new one or a stiff one, when you actually make the fan, which you probably won't be able to do in the first place, but when you do, the cards will want to spring out of your hands and they're really hard to keep in place, okay? Make sure that also to keep in mind, when you do a flower fan, you don't really ruin your deck, but I would do it with ruined decks. That's probably the best place to do them, because the way it ruins it, not necessarily ruins it, but it bends it very much. Okay, and if you don't want that kind of a bend in the decks, just unbend it or don't do the move at all. Okay, so that was the flower fan. Practice it, and again, it's one of those fans that is a little bit harder than maybe it looks. It's definitely not the easiest fan to learn, but it's definitely doable. So that was the flower fan, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. Alright, so here we go with the one-handed fan. The one-handed fan is probably one of the easier fans to learn, and that's because you'll be doing it within a few minutes. Mastering it, making it look good though, is something that will take a bit of your time. At first your fans are going to look kind of like bananas, and by that I mean they're not going to be to the 180-degree mark, or they're not going to pass it, they're not going to look too much like an arc. So, with that said, let's get right into the one-handed fan. Alright, so let's get into it. I'm going to show you the general idea of the one-handed fan because it's very simple, and then I'll give you the close-ups, okay? So here is the starting grip. The ring and middle finger are on top of the short edges, your thumb is on the bottom of the short edge, your index finger and your pinky are just floating there, kind of like a Go Web Go from Spider-Man. So you're right there. Now, what happens is your index finger and your pinky are going to push in, so they're just going to close up, and what that's going to let you do is let go with your thumb. So it's a very secure grip. The cards are not going to go anywhere, so don't worry about them. So once you've gripped it, you're going to turn your hand over. Once you do that, the way to control the deck is by your middle and ring finger. Because what's going to happen is your thumb finger is going to have to come to this corner right where your pinky is. But in order for it to do that, you have to out-jog or push the deck outward. And the way you do that is with your ring and middle fingers. So you're just going to do this motion. And again, all I'm doing is just pressing down with those two fingers. So press, and it out-jogs. And that lets your thumb to come in and sort of place itself right where the pinky is a little bit easier. So what's going to happen from this point is, as your thumb fans out, your pinky and index finger on the side, these two fingers, they're going to come to the front right where your middle and ring finger is. And when they do that, you're going to perform this action. It's just this spreading action, kind of like you're asking for cash money, okay? So that's what you're going to do. So you're going to come over with your fingers to the front, you're going to spread. So as you spread, that's all that happens essentially. And once you master the technique, you'll notice that your pinky always ends up just hanging there. It's never really on the card itself. It's just here. You see how it's kind of secluded from all the other fingers? Well, that's essentially how you grip it, okay? So it's like that. Again, just here. Now, pressure and gravity will help you, and speed as well. So the more speed and pressure you apply, the easier it becomes. Now, I would probably recommend you to use a new deck, a slick deck, but it does become harder once you get into these, this pushing action and just beveling it, especially when it comes to the closer. It's very difficult to close a slick deck, so be careful of that. If you apply all of these techniques to a worn-out deck, you'll be able to do it, just not as wide and as pretty, because with a slick deck, it really takes no strength or momentum to spread the cards. But remember, when you do the fan, the one-handed fan, initially it will look probably this size. You won't be able to clear your fingers, you'll get stuck maybe, but don't worry about that, because with time that will get a lot easier on you. So let's get into the closer of it. Here I'll show you the 3 most common ways to close it. From this position you can roll the deck back onto mechanic's grip, So it looks kind of like that. And it's a neat little closer. So what happens is you're just reversing the actions. So you're just closing the fan up as you sort of rotate your wrist around. So as you rotate, you bring it back to mechanic's grip, and the deck is face down. Okay? So it's here, close, rotate, back to mechanic's grip. And in full speed, it looks like that. Okay? Another way to close it is just a more simpler way, where you bring the fan over to your mechanic's grip. And the way I did that was my crotch right here, the hand crotch right there, it's just going to take all these cards. So you see this long edge of the deck? Well, what happens is it's going to be placed right in the crotch, and you're going to, your thumb is just going to close. So all it's doing is just closing the pack, and then you're just going to grip it with mechanic's grip. Okay? So essentially, all that happens is just that. Now the other way to close it is the one-handed way, and that's going to take a lot of practice, especially with a slick deck. So once you formed your fan, you can just close it like that. Okay? So one more time. Essentially all I'm doing here is reversing the action. So my thumb is going to close towards myself as the fingers away from you. So it's going to close, you're going to turn your hand back over, and look, I'm in my starting grip, and you're just going to place it back in a mechanic's grip. And that's all that happens. It's this and that. And again, that closer will take some time, so don't attempt that one. Just use a simpler one where the crotch, the hand crotch just grabs the deck, okay? So that was the one-handed fan. Let me show you a few more close-ups of that. Alright, so we're done with the one-handed fan. Give it some time and practice before expecting it to look good. But the great thing about it is, once you master it, you'll also be able to do it in both hands fairly quickly, unlike the thumb fan, which takes forever, and not to mention the fact that it's seldom used in comparison to dual one-handed fans. So that was the one-handed fan. Just practice it, use it. It's a very versatile fan that doesn't take too much effort, but it will require some time, okay? So that was the one-handed fan. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Alright, so let's learn the thumb fan. The thumb fan is one of the harder fans to learn, and that's because once you master it, you can't just transfer it to your other hand like you would with, say, the one-handed fan. Which brings me up to a good point. Do not learn the thumb fan in both hands, and it does take a while if you do want to do that. But personally, since I'm a lefty, I made blank fans when I first started, and the only thing I could do was one of these numbers. And that got old after a while, so I took the longest time to figure out whether I wanted to relearn the fan in the first place. So I decided that I should, because personally I think that fans with pips look much better. They look much more beautiful, they show a lot of contrast and color, and a few years ago you didn't have decks for lefties. Back then you had like back palming decks that were as soft as toilet paper, and I didn't want to use that sort of a deck, so I relearned the thumb fan. It took me months of frustration, and it really sucks when you have to relearn a foundational technique such as a fan or a spring, because then it takes forever. So before deciding which hand you want to learn it in, make sure that you decide and won't regret it later on. Okay? So with that said, let's get right to learning the thumb fan. Alright, so let's begin. When you first learn the thumb fan, I would recommend you use a new deck like I'm using here. Now, the reason you'd want to use a new deck is because they're slick, and slick decks will help you understand the mechanics of how to fan. But once you move on to an older deck or a more broken-in deck, since you know the technique or the mechanics of it, for the most part you'll be able to do a fan, but it won't look as good because you'll need more oomph, and the technique changes up a little because you will need to apply more pressure to a worn-out deck. Now, there is a problem with new decks. Because they are in perfect condition like this one is here, the only thing wrong with that is because my hands are sweaty. Unless your hands are extremely dry and perfect in conditioning, you'll get little oil spots on the cards. That way, when you fan, you'll get little gaps, and you'll have a pip sticking out of place. Like, I'll exaggerate it. You see how that 4 is sticking out? Well, that happens a lot to a new deck right when you open it up, because your hands have a little bit of dirt and gunk on it, and that's why it kind of does that. Now with an older deck though, that doesn't happen so much because it's already worn out and it's already dirty, so your oilies are not going to do much to it. So again, that's the advantage of using an older deck. For the most part, I use a worn out deck, not too beat up, but my hand condition doesn't affect the fans too much. So that's a little something to keep in mind. Now, let's begin with the actual thumb fan. You're going to hold the fan in this grip. And don't worry about that later on. I'll show you the close-ups and how you can hold it. But for the most part, this is what you do. Now, there's a lot of little things that depend on how your fan's going to turn out. See, if I hold the deck here in the center with my thumb, you're going to get a mid-sized or a mid-sized to larger circle here. And personally, when I do my thumb fans, I like to make my thumb fans large. Now, there is a problem with the large thumb fan. The problem is the fact that they're very difficult to handle. In other words, you can't toss them up in the air because they all explode and come apart. But the upside to a large fan is you can really display a big, large, beautiful one. And again, the downside is the fact that you can't really do much with them. So you're going to have to find a happy medium. Personally, when I show a fan, I usually make a large one, and if I want to do a move that utilizes a fan, I'll shrink it down a little and make it a little tighter. And the way you control that is by the positioning of the thumb. See, when you hold the deck in this position, if your thumb is farther away from you, or if the deck is closer to the crotch of your hand right here, you're going to get a fan that has a larger circle, okay? And this makes the fan fairly tight and fairly loose at the same time. And it's difficult to explain, but it's something you're going to have to play with. But basically the way you check is if you make a fan and see how my hands have been handling the new deck for a while, you'll get this, and this is where the oilies come in, and this is where you'll get little gaps inside the fan. But again, the way you check how tight a fan is first of all, through experience, you'll know, you'll be able to feel how it comes together. But the way you check is simply just balance the fan. And if you balance it and it wants to come apart, that's generally a loose fan, and you want to stay away from that if you want to do a move with it, okay, like toss it up into the air or whatnot. Now, here's what you actually do. Personally, I'm going to teach you guys how I show people just a normal fan, and we're going to maximize the range of motion and the largeness of the fan, okay? Now, what you're going to do is hold the deck, excuse me, on the corner right there. You don't want to have the deck too much inside the crotch of your thumb, or else it's not going to give you a large fan. And see, when I display my fans, you really almost get no circle at all inside of there, which gives you a very loose fan, but again, it looks much more larger. Okay, so we're here, and the way I did that was I positioned the deck right there with my thumb on the corner, with my fingers, with my index and middle finger right there, and I'm really barely gripping the deck at all, and I'm really putting a tight grip because if I let go of these new cards, they're just going to fall. But I'm barely gripping the deck, and what happens is your hand comes over with your index finger on top, your middle and ring finger on the long edge furthest away from you, your thumb on the long edge closest to you, and what happens is you're just going to cock the deck towards your thumb. So all you're doing is from here, it's perfectly perpendicular to the floor, you're just going to cock it towards yourself, and then what's going to happen is you're going to sort of bevel the deck. So all I did was essentially just bevel it like that, and then I'm going to spread it at the same time. Now, when you do a fan, speed definitely helps, and the way you hold the fan, at which angle, for the gravity to catch it, also helps a lot. So what happens is you're going to cock the deck towards yourself, you're going to bevel it, and then you're going to spread, okay? So once you do that, you hold the fan. So this is how it looks, okay? From the back, it's here. Now, if you're using a new slick deck, which I recommend when you first learn, you'll really be able to do this motion easily. And you'll really make a nice little fan. The only problem with it, most likely, I guarantee you, will be the fact that your fans are going to have a lot of excess cards here. And that's what happens to everybody who first learns. They'll have fans that are very uneven. And there is a big problem with that because, with other moves that require that stack to be evenly distributed. So you do want your fans to be even. And that's something that's going to have to take a lot of practice, especially when you switch over to older decks. Now, there is a little tip into making this fan a beautiful one. See, when you face the audience, say if you're my audience, I wouldn't make the fan obviously from the edge, and I wouldn't display it like that. I would display it from the side. So generally, people believe that you make a fan from the side. But that's not what goes on. The little subtlety to making a beautiful fan to your audience is forming the fan straight on. So no matter what position you are, your deck, the face of the deck should always face you. That way, when you fan, you get a larger range of motion with your thumb because it's easier to push outward than it is to push to the side. Okay? It's harder to do this than it is to do that. Now, this little motion from the front on helps the fan be much larger. See, when I first learned it, I always thought that, I want to display it from the side, so I always did one of these. But you don't get a beautiful fan, you don't get as large of a fan with a large of a motion if you, form it here. Notice the difference between that and this. I'm making it here, and then I pop my wrist out. So it's going to look like that. And that is a huge difference in how your fans are going to turn out. But essentially, the angling is the same. Just remember, if you want to cater to your audience or you want to show someone, if you're on stage or whatnot, you want to form it towards yourself, but then you want to quickly just whip your wrist to the side or whoever you're performing for. And remember, never to display your fans from the edge because they won't be able to see anything, okay? So that was generally how to make a thumb fan. Now, let me show you some close-ups of how to do that. here's one more little tip that will really help you increase the size of your thumb fan. And essentially what you're doing is just, after you've made your thumb fan and you're holding it there, you essentially bring your middle finger down and then raise the whole fan up. And when you raise it up, that gives you more area in the back to spread it out further. So I'll show you a little close-up of that right now. I want to give you guys one final tip that's going to tremendously help with your fanning. This is a tip I picked up from Jerry Tuskowski, who is the lead fanning expert. He's the best in the world at it. The way he puts it is, try to think of a fan kind of like a ribbon spread, but just done in an arc or a little semicircle or a full circle. Okay? So essentially that's what a fan is, just a ribbon spread done in a little arc. And what a ribbon spread is an arm spread just done on a table. So kind of like you see done in casinos where they spread the cards out. So what I want you to do is take the deck and then sort of spread it as evenly as possible out on a table. You can spread it either toward yourself or away from yourself. Now what that's going to do for you is help you understand the spreading action. This will help this thumb sort of get a feel for what it's going to emulate when you actually do the real fan. So it's going to help you understand it. It's kind of like physics. You're just taking a complicated technique and then simplifying it down even further. This is just a smaller example of that. Because remember, understanding a technique is more than just being able to do it. It's also understanding the little subtleties and the physics behind it, okay? So again, take the deck and spread it out. Now, another thing that's going to do for you is help you understand the bevel. And the bevel is extremely important. The bevel is this action. Essentially, the deck is creating diagonal lines. And when I fan, or when you're going to fan, make sure that the deck is beveled. Make sure that it's not perfectly squared up and perfectly straight edged, okay? Because if it is straight edge, it's going to leave little excess cards right here when you first do the fan. So it's going to look something like that. You see how there's a lot of excess? Well, this ribbon spreading action is going to be essential for you to understand the beveling, because without the bevel, you're going to get that excess. And with the bevel, you'll get nice, even fans, okay? So that's just a little tip that's going to really help you with your fans, so don't forget it. Alright, so we're done with the thumb fan. Remember to use a new deck because it's slick. It will help you understand the mechanics involved. Also make sure to master that ribbon spread, as that will really help your fans turn out even. Unlike mine, throughout this whole explanation, they were probably fugly because they're slow and I didn't apply much pressure to them, and I'm using a new deck. Remember, in the brief overview section, when I've made the fans, I've got a lot of spots or little gaps here. And the way to get rid of that is you want to take all the cards in front of it and place them to the bottom, or the top, so that this oily card is always near the top, or at the, the bottom, or at the very top. And so you just want to get rid of it, or, stay away from the center, because they will always bug you and they'll always come back in that same spot, no matter what you do, unless you get rid of it. So just be aware of that. Another thing to be careful of is holding the deck in mechanics grip, because if you hold it for extended periods of time, the bottom card heats up, and when heat and moisture is introduced and mixed together, they're going to bend the cards. And when it bends that bottom card, it's exactly what causes that gap. So remember, speed, pressure, momentum, a little bit of gravity, and an awareness of the heated cards and the oils will really help you turn or make your fans really large and beautiful. So just be careful of that. This is why I choose to use decks that are fairly broken in, because my hands are very sweaty, they don't affect it too much. I don't get perfect fans, but I'm not worried. And it's another thing I wanted to bring up. A lot of people in cardistry, or actually quite a few, worry about the perfecting of fans, and it's not really, I don't want to say smart, but not a lot of people, when you perform for, they're not going to say, oh, your fans are fugly, you suck. They're not going to care if a pip or your fans are not perfect. And a lot of people concentrate and spend so many years perfecting it, really for nothing, because they could be concentrating on other things. So don't spend too much time on it. I've given you all the essentials to learning these fans, or this thumb fan. So if you do have a stumbling block, which we all do when learning moves, everything will go smooth up to a certain point. Once you hit that certain point, don't go looking for answers, because the answer 99% of the time is just you have to practice more. Once you practice it, you'll hop over that block and continue your learning process, okay? So that was the thumb fan. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Practice it, use it, and master it. Let's move on. Alright, so we're finally through with the fanning section. I want to give you guys a few tips that generally apply to most fanning techniques. The first of which is to use fanning powder. Fanning powder is something that's going to tremendously help you with forming your fans perfectly. My understanding of fanning powder is fairly simple. What it is basically spreading clean dirt throughout the deck, or a clean substance. See, when we handle a new deck of cards, because they're so perfect and because they've never been touched before, when your dirty hands that have oils and grease on them are introduced to the deck, you'll have little gaps and ridges inside the fan because of the oils and dirts. So I call that the new deck effect, or the gap effect. And again, because of the dirt, it sort of makes it imperfect. Now, fanning powder negates that whole thing. That's because it spreads that clean substance, or that dirty substance, throughout the deck, so that when your hands are introduced to it, it's not going to have that much of an impact on it. The other thing it does is it makes the deck act as a cohesive unit. It sort of makes the deck stick together. Not in a glue sense of a way, but it's sort of something that you're going to have to experiment with, and it generally helps with most moves, especially fanning, so it's something to experiment with and play with. The second thing I wanted to talk about is using a new deck of cards when learning how to fan. See, when you learn how to fan, if you use a new deck of cards, you'll easily understand the mechanics involved. But you want to stay away from that when doing live performances or things where your deck sort of wears out over time. Because just because you can fan a deck of cards perfectly with a new deck does not mean you'll be able to apply that to a worn out deck. You'll need more oomph added, you'll have more pressure, and you just don't want to get too used to using a new deck when you fan. So you just want to be careful of that. The only thing that this doesn't apply to is the flower fan. When you learn how to do the flower fan, I would highly recommend you use a very beat up deck, very soft deck, because if you use a new deck, it's going to just explode because it's very hard to hold a stiff deck within your fingers, okay? So just be careful of that. The last thing I wanted to talk about is the bend inside the deck. The bend is very important, and I've discussed it before, but it's something that I wanted to go through one more time. It doesn't apply to just fanning, it applies to every technique and every move that you do. If I could give you the equivalent of it, it would sort of be like shaving. When you shave and you touch your skin and you go with the grain, it's very soft and smooth. But when you go against that grain, it's very prickly and it's very rough. So that's my little silly example of demonstrating what this bend is. Now by that I mean, when you do for example, the one-handed shuffle, you'll notice that the bend, or the Pac-Man mouth, is facing me. What that does is it helps interlace the cards together. If the bend was facing away from me, it's harder to interlace the cards. Now, the opposite of that is true for the one-handed fan. See, when you perform the one-handed fan, the bevel or the mouth of the Pac-Man is facing away from me, and that gives me a nice, smooth one-handed fan. If I were to do it the opposite way, you'll notice that you'll get this little gap, or this little ridge. See this open space? Well, that happens as well, and that's just the grain, or my way of putting it. And every move has its own standard, or has its own best way to sort of utilize that bend. And the bend is something that naturally occurs in cardistry when we handle a deck of cards. And for the most part, the bend ends up this way, which is the correct way. So you want to utilize every move to your advantage. You want to be cognizant of that bend. If you're not aware of it, moves become much more difficult. So you just want to know that it's there and use it to your advantage. Now in Genesis, in this first volume, I've covered every move and shown you the best advantage, or the best way to utilize that bend. So try not to experiment with these moves and flip the deck over and back and forth again. Just stick to the way I've shown it to you. When you create your own moves, you'll sort of get an understanding of this technique or this idea, and you'll discover what's the best way to utilize this bend in your own moves, okay? But generally speaking, 90% of the moves in cardistry utilize the deck so that the Pac-Man mouth is facing away from you. So 90% of the time, you'll start with the deck face down and you'll do moves like that, okay? So that's just something to keep in mind. So in conclusion to the fanning section, just be careful not to spend hours and hours and days and months practicing fanning and perfecting it. Perfection is just something that's going to come with time, so don't rush it and don't force it. I see a lot of people spend years on perfecting something that is so minute that it really makes no difference in your performances. So again, it's not something that I want you to spend too much time on. It's just something that's going to come with years of practice, okay? So that was the fanning section. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Alright, so this is Angel Slide. Angel Slide was originally inspired through the form of contact juggling, where an acrylic ball, or sort of a crystal glass ball, is slid from the arms back and forth in sort of a continuous non-stop fluid motion. So I kind of took the art form and took that idea and I applied it to this move, and this is what came out. So with that said, let's get right into Angel Slide. Okay, so let me briefly cover Angel Slide. What happens is a card is basically slid down the arm in a continuous manner back and forth, or you can even transfer it from arm to arm. Depending on your style, you'll pick and choose what suits you best. So let's get more in depth with Angel Slide. Okay, so let's get into the Angel Slide. Now this move is very simple, so I'll quickly show you the mechanics of it. Now you can start off with one card on the back of your arm already, or you can get into that position by using Bone's basic angel display. Alright, so it's just sitting there on your thumb. Now what happens is your other hand comes over and spreads its fingers as wide as possible. And using your index and your middle finger, you're just going to come between the thumb and let the card rest on top of your two fingers. Okay, so you're in this position. Now what happens is your arm is going to tilt up as it moves forward. Okay, so that's what kick-starts the motion of the card sliding down the arm. Once it's slid down all the way to about here, it's going to naturally want to fall. And if it doesn't, you can simply tilt your arm towards yourself or away from yourself, depending on where the deck is, to finish the move. All right. So that's pretty much it. However, you can do this move in one of three ways. If you're wearing jewelry, which I would recommend against if you're using this move, but if you're wearing a watch or a bracelet, the card isn't going to slide down all the way. So what you can do is you can use just your hand. So you can slide it on just your hand. And this is the move I use most often, especially when I'm wearing jewelry. Now if you're not, you can actually let the card slide all the way down and catch. Alright, so that was the original Angel Slide. And you can also do this where you transfer the card from arm to arm. So in this position, the card is going to slide all the way down, and it's going to naturally want to fall. So it's going to fall towards yourself, your other hand comes over, and it's going to sort of balance on this hand, and it's going to slide down, come all the way down the arm, and then it's going to come to the other hand, and then down, and on top of the deck. Alright? So that was just three ways of doing it. Let me show you a few more angles. Alright, so this concludes the simple, fun, and addictive angel slide. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Remember, when first learning this move, do not just rush into it and don't throw your arm around back and forth, as that won't help you too much. Try to take it slow when you first learn it, so you can understand the slide of the card, the degree of your arm in which you want to slide it, and sort of try to connect the two motions together from when you're going arm to arm, as that will greatly help you and sort of make it a bit more smoother and more visual. Alright? So I hope you guys enjoyed it. That was Angel Slide. Alright, so here comes Blink. Blink is a little utility move that I like to use at the end of a cut combo or a sequence. You can also use this move by itself, but I'd recommend using it as sort of the cherry on top. Okay? Now, you'll be doing this move without even knowing it, which is how simple and easy it is to do. And if you blink, you'll miss it. So let's get into it. Alright, so let's get straight to blinking. This is what happens. You're going to riffle about a third of the deck. Your thumb is going to be placed on the face of the card, while your other four fingers are on the back. Now your four fingers let go, and immediately, as they let go, the packet will fall, and your hand will pivot right around to the bottom to catch it in time before it falls. So you're going to have to time it correctly, okay? Now there are several ways of doing it. You can do it with the deck. So we're here. You can do it with the packet, or you can toss the deck in an aerial version. So you're going to toss from one hand into the other. So it's going to look like that. And essentially, I've just tossed the deck. Okay. So let me show you some slow-mos of Blink. Alright, so that was it for Blink. Now there's a little dilemma when first learning the move. That's simply because if you're using an old deck, it will have little gaps and ridges in it. That means that when you twirl the deck, it will come apart because the air will catch in and it will just explode and fall to the floor. So you don't want to use an old deck. But you also don't want to use a new deck either, and that's simply because it's also very slick and it too will come apart when twirling it. So what I recommend you do is get a deck and then rubber band it. What that'll do is it'll make the deck act like a brick. Literally. The deck will just suddenly act like a brick. It'll turn red and brick-like. Or not. But what it will do is help you better understand the mechanics and motions of it. So once you're satisfied with that, once you think you can do it without the rubber band, try it, and I guarantee you you'll be doing it in no time. So that's pretty much it for Blink. I hope you guys use it and enjoy it. Alright, so this is the Angel Catch. It's a very simple move, and it's cool for when you want to finish or catch a card or finish a cut combo, as you've seen. It utilizes Bone Hose Angel concept, and it uses the basic Angel display to sort of sandwich and trap the card or a flying packet in between it. So it's a great move I like to use to finish my sequences, so let's get right into it. Alright, so prior to learning the Angel Catch, make sure you've mastered the basic Angel itself, alright? So that's all it is. And all you're doing really is placing one card on top of your thumb and just balancing it. This is the basis of the whole entire move, the angel catch. Okay? So make sure you've mastered that. Alright, so let's go over the angel catch. What happens is, you're going to form the basic angel display, you're going to toss a packet or a card, and it's going to be in the air and it's going to be trapped right in between the display, okay? So it's just going to be sandwiched there. So it's here and there. Alright, that's about it. Let's get more in depth. Okay, so let's learn the very easy angel catch. So all that happens is your hand is going to ripple off about 1/3 of a pack and roll it onto your other hand. Your dominant hand is going to execute the basic angel display. From here, you can just execute any cut you want or no cut at all. And what you're going to do is curl your index finger underneath as you extend it and let go with your thumb. So it's sort of propelling the deck into the air. So you're just going to toss, and as it's in the air, about here, you're going to time it so that your thumb card collapses and sandwiches the flying packet perfectly on time. Okay? So again, all that happens is basic angel display, toss, and trap. Okay? So toss and trap. Alternatively, you can also do this move not just with a packet, but with a single card. So you do the thumb propulsion right inside. Okay? So that's just another way to utilize this move. Now, a good way to practice it is to simply toss a packet right back onto the deck. And once you get that move down, you can try it with the thumb card, and there you have the basic angel catch. Alright, so that was it. That was the angel catch. It's very, very simple, and it's not a move that I recommend using by itself. It's just a little finale or a finish to your cut combos or your sequences. So I hope you guys enjoy it, use it. That was the angel catch. Alright, so this is Time Shot. Time Shot uses your wristwatch to flick a card right out. So let me give you a brief overview of how it works. Okay, so starting in this grip with your pinky, ring, and middle finger on top, your index finger hanging loose, and your thumb on the closest short edge of the deck. What happens is your other hand comes over and takes one card from the bottom of the deck. So I just took one over. Your hand is going to turn over and place this one card, this edge right here with this corner right, and it's going to wedge it right inside the wristwatch. So this corner right there, if you're using your other hand, it would be this corner. So you place it here, like that. Alright? So you just wedge the card right inside the watch, right here, so it stays there. Now what happens is you're going to make a one-handed fan. Now, if you don't know how to make a one-handed fan, just go back to the beginner section of Genesis and we'll pick up from there. So you make a fan, and if you'll notice, this card is now in perfect position for me to flick right out with my other hand. All I'm doing is just flicking this little corner right there. So we'll try that. Just flick and catch, okay? And the fan goes back on top. So one more time. Card is placed inside the watch. You make a fan, and I'm glad this happened. You see that? Now, why this happened is because my watch was a little further down on my wrist, and the fan sort of ate the card instead of popping it out. So let me exaggerate that motion for you. Instead of popping this card out, it ate it. Now what you can do from here is press with your other fingers, which help hold the fan, and as you rotate your hand, the momentum of it will release this card. As you sort of release pressure with those fingers, the card will come back around and over the hand and onto the other hand. So that little error does happen when your watch tends to be sort of loose on you and it's sort of farther away from your hand. But if you do want to do the actual flick, you want to place it as close to your wrist as possible. So let me do the other version for you that happens when your wristwatch is further down on your wrist. So here, place inside, eat the card, and flick. Okay? And the card goes underneath. Alright? Alright, so from another angle, re-grip. Okay? Make sure your watch is on your wrist as opposed to farther away. Slide one card off the bottom and wedge it right there. So you're going to fan and pop that card right out. Now what happens is, before you pop it out, you don't want to flick from here, because then it's going to go in an arc to the left, and with your other hand to the right, it's going to go to the right in an arc, and that's not what you want. You want to sort of tilt your hand down so that when you flick from here, it's going to go straight up. In your right hand, you would sort of tilt your hand down like so. Alright, so using your middle finger and your thumb, you're just going to flick it right up like that. Remember to tilt and flick, okay? And then place the fan back on top. And you're done. Alright, so that was Time Shot. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I included the move on the DVD to show you that cardistry isn't just limited to using your hands. It can be virtually anything. In this case, your wristwatch. So I hope you guys practice the move and have fun with it. Alright, so here comes Pick Whip. Pick Whip is a very simple move that uses swing cuts, and then it's finalized by a packet whip. Now, it was originally named after an editing program in After Effects, hence the name Pick Whip. Now, prior to learning this, though, you're going to have to master the swing cuts, and they're very simple. They look something like this. Okay? So let's get into it. So prior to learning Pick Whip, we're going to have to learn how to swing cut. And it's very simple. Here's how you're going to do it. You'll start off in mechanic's grip. Your other hand comes over and grabs the deck by its short edge with the thumb and middle fingers. Notice how my fingers aren't in the center. They're actually grabbing the deck right where the three fingers are. So on the very edge. Okay? Now what happens from here is your index finger is just going to pull up on about a third or a half, depending on how many packets you want to swing over. So this time we're going to use a third, because we're going to have to swing 3 packets over. Okay? So it's going to look like this. You're going to pull up about a third of the deck. Notice how my index finger just pushed up. Okay? Now your other hand comes over, and it's going to grab that packet. Your index finger is just going to swing it over. So it's literally just pushing it to the side. Now as you do that, your other hand comes over and grabs this packet right into mechanic's grip. Okay? So you've grabbed one, you split the deck again into a half, or a third again from this point. Okay, so you lift up, push over, grab it again, and the last packet, you just let it fall onto the deck. And that is essentially how to execute the swing cut. Okay? So in slow motion, it's going to look like this. Simple enough. Now let's get into pick whip. Alright, so let's begin with pick whip. You're going to start exactly like we did with the swing cuts. Your index finger pushes up, and it's going to swing one packet over. You're going to swing a second one over, and on the third, your thumb is going to be placed on top of the deck. Your ring finger curls underneath, and it's just going to flip this packet face up. And notice it's resting alongside the thumb, so it's just leaning against it. Now from here, your thumb is going to push out as your index finger pushes in. So it's going to be this motion. And what that does is it sort of out jogs that top packet. So it just out jogs it. So again, 1, 2, flip face up, and out jog. Now from here, your other hand comes over, and it's going to use your 3 fingers to push this packet and rotate it around. Now your index and your thumb fingers act as sort of an axis point on which the packet can rotate. Okay? So 1, 2, 3, push out, rotate, and once you get to the Pac-Man position, you're going to push the bottom packet outward. You're going to do so with your middle ring and pinky fingers. So you're just going to press down like that. So you press down, now your thumb comes on top and pushes down. So this packet is brought to the bottom. Okay? So in full, it's going to look like this. Swing once, swing twice, packet is turned over, out jogged, swung around, fingers pressed down, thumb presses down, and we're good to go. And that is essentially pick whip. Alright, so that was it for Pick Whip. It's a very simple move. So just remember to master your swing cuts and use your hands to sort of tilt the deck and use gravity and momentum to whip that packet around, and that'll increase your speed, okay? So practice it, use it, and enjoy it. That was Pick Whip. Alright, so this is the 52 motion sequence. Now, what it is basically a cool way to close a thumb fan. And I use this move by itself all the time, but it looks much cooler when presented as part of the larger sequence, and that's the 52 motion sequence. So let's get right into learning 52 motions closer. So in brief summary, this is what happens. A fan is made and then instantly closed and placed on the back of your hand. Alright, and that's all that happens. Now let's get more in depth. Alright, so here it is, 52 motions closer. You're going to make a thumb fan, okay? Now what's going to happen is your other hand comes over, and using your middle finger, you're going to go to the long side of the deck here, to the bottom. And you're just going to close the fan. And you notice how my wrist is sort of tilted so the gravity can sort of help me close the fan. Now the deck goes onto mechanic's grip essentially, and your thumb and index push against each other to square the deck up. This is while you're in this position. And the deck is simply placed on the back of your hand. Alright? You pause from here and then you toss the deck back onto your other hand. So again, make a fan, close, square up, place, pause, toss, and catch. Okay? Now I've broken this move down into 2 steps, but when you're actually doing this in real time, notice that there are no pauses or breaks to this move. It's just one continuous fluid motion, so non-stop. So you bring your other hand over, and then suddenly the fan just suddenly closes. Okay? So here, and close. Alright? So let me give you a few more angles. Alright, so that was the 52 motion sequence. Now I like to use this move by itself all the time, And it's one of those moves that's very startling to someone who's not suspecting it, because all they see is a fan at the edge of your fingertips, and your other hand comes over and it suddenly just vanishes, and then all they see are the remains of the deck on the back of your hand. It looks very dramatic and very surprising, especially when you just hold that position right there so they can sort of digest what they saw. So that was 52 motions closer. Okay, so here is the basic card and fan. Now, I really enjoy this move because it serves two purposes. Not only is it a technique to practice the original card and fan, because when I first invented the card and fan, I used this move to practice actually catching the card inside the fan. Because with this move, you can focus on the actual mechanics of letting go with your thumb and sort of getting that card inside. Because with the original card and fan, you have to focus more on the timing and the formation of your fan. If you've noticed, with this move, your fan is already pre-made, so you can really focus on your technique. The other cool thing about this move is you can actually use it for your performances. Once you master this move, you'll get it 9 out of 10 times. And I usually use this move when, I'm nervous, or when there's a lot of people, or when I first show someone the card and fan. So I really enjoy this move, and I think you will too. So let's get right into learning the basic card and fan. Okay, so let me show you a quick prerequisite for the card and fan basic, and this is it. Just tossing the card up into the air vertically. Now what I'm doing here is using my thumb as the center point while my index finger curls in and my middle finger pushes out. So the card flies from the thumb and the middle finger as I'm pivoting it around, okay? So you're just going to use this move to toss the card inside the fan, alright? So that's just a small prerequisite that you should know before trying this move. Let's move on. Alright, so make a fan of your choice, and we're going to peel one card from the thumb and use this card to toss it up into the air. Alright, so what happens is, before the card lands, you're going to release pressure with your thumb, and that will make the card much easier to slide into the fan, because that will release some pressure from the top. And sometimes if you have a death grip on the fan, the card is just going to bounce from the edge and bounce off. And you don't want that. So you toss the card in, and you'll notice that every time I catch the card inside, my fan deteriorates. And the reason being, again, is because my thumb releases pressure on the fan. And of course, it's going to look uglier and uglier. So I don't recommend doing this version multiple times, but it is a good version to do when you first show someone or when you're nervous, because this version works like 90% of the time. As you can see, I've executed like 6 or 7 of them in a row without any fail rate. So this move is good for when you first learn the card and fan, because from the original card and fan, you'll notice you have to practice your timing right, and it makes it increasingly hard as the card gets higher. So if you use the original card and fan, you're gonna, at first, your card is only gonna go in like once every 30 tries. And with this move, you can actually practice, the actual technique of letting loose with your thumb and actually catching the card inside, alright? So that was the basic card and fan. Alright, so it's pretty much fail safe. But the fan is starting to get ugly. Alright, that was the basic card and fan. Okay, so this concludes the basic card and fan. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Remember that I told you at first that once you master this move, you'll get it 9 out of 10 times. So don't expect it to have even 2 out of 10 times when you first learn it, because it'll take a lot of time, but once you master it, you'll be glad you invested so much time into learning it. Remember that this technique also helps you in parallel with learning the original card and fan, because then you can actually focus on the timing of making your fan. Because with this move, you'll have mastered the actual catching of the card inside that fan. So I hope you guys enjoy this move and love it as much as I do and use it in your performances. That was the basic card and fan. Alright, so Tetra. Tetra is an instantaneous 4-line packet display. Now it uses IM to accomplish that, and it looks really, really cool when done right, and it's very, very startling. Now, originally, 2 people have really inspired me to create this move. One of them was Matt Lang. Matt Lang came up with a cool instantaneous packet production, and it looks so startling. It's a very beautiful move, so check it out if you guys can. Now, another person that's unintentionally inspired me to create and sort of, develop a foundational way of thinking for me is Danny Garcia. Now, through filming with him and sort of talking with him about, his magic and the way he creates, he sort of told me that he sticks to simplicity and he loves simple effects. And I can really see that through his magic, and I think that's so much more impactful than anything that you can do, advanced, such as, arm spreads, springs. They're very simple, but they really do get the biggest reactions. And so I always try to apply that to every move that I learn and that I create, and this is one of them. So without further ado, let's check out Tetra. Alright, so because this move is so simple, I'm just going to give you guys a very brief, detailed explanation, a very brief overview. So let me give you an exposed view of how this actually works. So in secret, I'm going to split the deck and position my hands so that one is in front of the other. And then I'm just going to execute the scissor cut, like so, and extend both of those packets and form a line. Now this happens instantly, and the position to get ready to do the actual display also should be done under secret. So without further ado, let's get into the actual detailed explanation of how to do this move. Alright, so you're going to start off in Mechanics Grip. Now what you're going to do is you're going to pivot your body 360 degrees around. So you're going to start here and end here. The reason for doing that is you want to get into this position from undercover so that they won't see that. So it's going to be very startling when you actually perform the extension. Alright, so when your back is facing the audience, you're just going to split the deck into 2 evenly, and you're going to get into the scissor grip position. Now if you don't know how to do the scissor cut, go back to the section that teaches it, and then we'll pick up from there. Alright, so we're here. Place one of your hands and arms right in front of the other, and you're here, right in front of them. This should be done as you're turned around. So you're right there, ready for the extension. It's an exposed view right there, see that? Now for the sake of explanation, you see how my hand is blurry right there? Well, I'll keep it to my body, and I'll keep my hands tight so that you can see it perfectly in focus, alright? So we're here, and right there. See how this looks like one deck? That's what you want it to look like. Now from there, as your arms are fully extended, you want to just extend both of those and form the line right there. Now this should be done quickly and instantly. Okay, this should be extremely startling and should really take no seconds to just bam, extend. So do it instantly and do it quickly. So let me give you an over-the-shoulder view of how this looks. Alright, so that was Tetra. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Some of the things to keep in mind are make sure that when you're in the get ready position that no card right there is peeking out. You see how that's peeking out? Sometimes you'll forget and you'll have your thumb very relaxed, and that's not what you want. You want it to look like it's only one card or one deck right in the front. So keep it like that. And remember to extend your arms for full effect. When I first created Tetra, I actually did the display horizontally, and over time I found that doing it vertically is a little bit more impressive. And from time to time you'll get variable results. Sometimes people will tell you, oh, it would look cool horizontally, or oh, it would look cool vertically. So pick and choose whatever fits your style the most. For me personally, I like doing it vertically because I like the tower display, and it looks a little bit more magical to me. I want to give special thanks to Danny Garcia for inspiring my way of thinking, and to Matt Lang for creating such an amazing display that kind of inspired me to create this move. So I hope you guys enjoyed it, and let's move on. Here comes Bullet Shot. Bullet Shot is one of the most versatile card flicks around. The reason being is because it's so controlled. It's very, very simple and easy to do. There's a lot of things you can do with the bullet category, such as the twirl, and the Bullet Shot is just another one of them. It's my favorite flick to do because it's so simple, and it's kind of like Blink, where it's so simple that you'll be doing it in your hands without even knowing it. You can do this move extremely fast, or you can do it gracefully and toss the card into the air. You can do it behind your back, and there's just so many things you can do with it. So have fun with it, and let's get into it. Alright, so Bullet Shot is very simple. You're going to start exactly like we did with Bullet. Your index finger pushes the card forward and displaces it about 1/4 of an inch. The excess is pulled down by the index finger. Middle finger comes out of the way and then comes back in. And it's important that it comes back to its original position, and I'll explain why in a second. This is the get ready position for Bullet Shot. Notice that this card is perfectly parallel to the deck. Okay? Now what happens from here is your index finger is just going to flick outward. And what that's going to do is it's going to pivot this card right around the middle finger. Okay? So it's going to do this motion. So you're just going to flick, and it's going to pivot right out. And that's what causes the card to spin. Now, as you do this, though, you'll want to give it a little bit of a wrist flick, because that will help the card initially come out and clear the fingers, okay? And it's not necessary, but it does help in the initial learning process. Now, another thing that helps is having your index fingernail trimmed. If you have a long fingernail, this finger will just slip right off, and you'll want as much friction as possible to come in contact between the card and the finger. Now obviously the speed of the flick will be determined by how much power your index finger has, okay, or how much you use. If you want the card to go slowly and smoothly, you'll want to give it not too much of a flick, but more like a glide, okay? So it's going to look like this. If you want it to have speed, you'll want a little bit more strength. It's going to look like that, okay? So that was Bullet Shot. Let me show you a few more angles. Alright, so that's it for Bullet Shot. Remember to have a little bit of a wrist flick as you're doing it. And remember to have your fingernails trimmed, and that should help you out a lot, especially when first learning. So practice, experiment, and have fun with it. That was Bullet Shot. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Alright, so here comes the card in flower fan. Now this is a cool move because you don't see the flower fan too often at all. And when combined with this technique, it looks really startling. Another cool thing about this move is it's fairly easy to do. The only hard part about this move is the flower fan itself. So once you master it, this move becomes a cakewalk, alright? So let's learn it right now. Alright, let me introduce you to some of the prerequisites to learning this move. The first you gotta know is how to toss the card straight up into the air. And all I'm doing there is, with my thumb on the back side of the card, I'm just gonna pivot with my index finger in, while my middle finger comes out. So it just kinda twists this card as I'm tossing it up into the air, okay? Second thing you wanna know how to do is how to make the flower fan. Once you've mastered those two techniques, you can move on. Make sure to use a slightly softer deck to help with those flower fans. Now let's get into the actual technique of the card and flower fan. Alright, so let's get into it. You're going to make a flower fan. And if you'll notice, when you first start out learning the flower fan, your fan isn't going to be fully round and the cards are going to be very close together. So you're going to have a flower fan that's about this size and it's very close together. That decreases your chances because the card is going to hit against another card. And to remedy this, you of course want to practice your flower fan to make it as wide as possible so the cards are spread out evenly and further apart from each other. But another good tip is after you've taken the card out of the fan, so I take one card out, you'll notice that card is buckled in the same shape as the fan. Now, when it's in the air, this sort of decreases your chances because once it's spinning, it becomes thicker due to its buckle. So you want to unbuckle it and make the card straight, alright? So just straight. Because once you toss it in the air, it's going to be thin and you'll have more chances of sort of catching it. Now to catch the card inside the actual fan, you'll use your thumb and your middle finger to trap the card inside. So go on both bottoms of the card and you're just going to close it like that. So you just trap it inside. Now your chances again will depend on how well you can time this move. Once the card is about an inch away from your fan, you're just going to trap it and start to close it. And you close it extremely fast, so you just slap or you just flap it up and just close it. So it's kind of like a clap. Alright, so you make the fan, take one card out, remember to unbuckle it, toss, and catch. Now, a good thing to remember is when you actually make the fan, and when you toss the card up, make sure that the fan and the card are perfectly parallel to each other. You don't want to have the fan pivoted and you toss the card because then it's diagonal and it's not going to catch inside. So a lot of people forget that. You want to toss it so it's straight up, so it's perfectly aligned with the flower fan, alright? So let me give you some more alternate angles and slow-mos for this move, okay? so that was the card and flower fan. There's not much to say about this move. Just master the basic flower fan and you'll be doing this in no time. That was the card and flower fan. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Alright, that was the Rewind deck twirl. Now, I was originally inspired by Jerry Tuskowski's deck twirls, who was the original creator of this concept. He's published a few of his in his Encyclopedia of Playing Card Flourishes, which is a great book that I recommend to everyone. So with that said, let's get more in depth. Alright, so here is a Rewind. It's very simple. A thing to note, when you start with the move, if you start with the deck face down, you'll end with the deck face up. So I'm going to want to end with the deck face down, so I'll start face up. Okay? Make sense? Now, this is how it's going to start. It's very, very simple, so follow along. You're going to place your thumb on the top of the deck, and your index, middle ring, and pinky fingers go on to the bottom. So they're just going to grab the bottom deck. Alright? So we're here in this position. So your hand just slides it forward, and then rotates it back. And you're going to rotate it onto the thumb. But your thumb is going to be placed down, so it's just placed on top of the thumb to just rest there. Now my pinky is on the back, so the deck sort of doesn't fall when I move my hand. So what happens is, you notice how the deck is face down right now? Well, you're going to rotate it all the way around until it's face down again. So I've just sort of rotated my wrist as well as used my thumb to pivot the deck. Now, your other hand comes over, cupped in the same exact position, and the deck is placed in your hand. Remember to have the fingers on the back to prevent the deck from falling. And essentially what you're doing is just repeating this move over and over again, but without any breaks or pauses, okay? So that's what gives it the fluid motion. Now, throughout this whole move, you also want to keep the deck as square as possible, okay? So all you're doing again is just rotating it. And you're not really placing it, you're just giving yourself enough time to re-grip so your fingers go to the back and grip the deck. So all you're doing is just rotating it, okay? So let me give you that from another angle. Okay, so here it is from the side. Thumb goes on top, four fingers go on the bottom, your deck slides up and around. Now your thumb just goes down and the deck is balanced right on the thumb. Remember to have your pinky and your ring fingers, and you can also use your middle finger to sort of provide the deck from the back so it doesn't fall over. Now you notice how the deck is face down? Well, you're going to use your thumb to push towards you, or pull towards you, as your wrist turns. So the deck is face down right now, you're going to pivot and pull and turn your wrist so the deck is yet again face down. You're going to place it in this hand, cupped again, in the same exact position. Remember to use your fingers on the back for support, and see the deck is face down. You're just going to pivot it around so it's face down yet again. And you're just repeating this motion over and over. And try to make it as fluid as possible. Now, when you get this done, you're not literally placing the deck on the thumb to balance. You're just giving yourself enough time to re-grip and sort of keep rotating the deck. So the goal of this move is to make it look fluid, speedy, and try to make the deck as square as possible. But this placing motion sort of helps you understand the basic mechanics involved in rotating the deck. Okay? Okay, that was Rewind. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Deck twirls are meant to be used as transition moves. So if you wanted to shift or turn your body elsewhere, you would use a deck twirl. They're sort of the connection or the things you use in between other moves. So with that said, I hope you guys enjoyed. That was Rewind. Okay, so this is Flashback, a totally complete false cut that happens in the air. Let's get into it. Alright, so let me briefly cover this. Flashback's one of those moves that looks very difficult to do, or it looks like a lot more is going on than it really is, but in reality it's quite simple. All that happens is the packet is sort of extended out and it's placed into your other hand. The hands rotate around, toss the packet up, and catch. Okay? And that's pretty much it. So let's get into the technical aspect of it right now. Alright, so let's begin. You're going to hold the deck in sort of a get ready for the one-handed fan. Okay? Your index finger is going to split half the deck open, and it's going to insert itself right inside. So you're right there. Your ring finger is also going to be inserted right along the pack. Your pinky is just floating there like it's useless, because it really is. Okay. So you're going to extend this outer packet, so it's sort of like a lengthwise thumb cut, but it's not. Alright, so you're in this position. Your other hand comes over, and the packet is placed inside into mechanic's grip. Now what happens is your hand turns over, but as it turns over, it's going to execute this move right here. So your pinky goes to the back of the short edge, your index goes to the front of the short edge, your thumb has replaced the index finger, and these three fingers, the index, middle, and ring, sort of curl underneath, and you're here. So this is the position you want to be in, but upside down. So here, curl underneath, but in an upside down position. Alright? Now this packet, as it's doing this, this finger, hand, comes upside down, as this packet rotates around your hand and is placed face up on the back of your hand. So you're in this position right here. So one more time from the beginning. Fingers are inserted. Packet is extended out. Okay. The other hand takes it over. Hand turns around upside down. And this packet is placed face up right here. Okay, so this is the get ready for the toss. Now you're going to move your hand up, and the top packet is going to do this. Watch. Your index finger is just going to rotate this packet upside down, or excuse me, right side up, so it lands on top of the aerial packet right here. So you're just going to toss and turn around. So that's all that's going to happen. It's just going to land on top of the aerial packet. So toss and that. Okay? But as that happens, what's going to happen is you're just going to toss this packet right up. So as you move your hand up, you let go with your thumb and pinkies, and it sort of gets tossed in the air and flips and is landed on top of the hand as this hand pivots it and catches it, alright? So one more time. Extend, rip, upside down, on top, and you're here. And then from here, you're just going to release the two and catch. Alright? So that's all I've done. So in slow motion. So that was it. So in full speed, 10 of spades, king of hearts. 10 of spades, king of hearts. Alright? And that was Flashback. so this concludes the simple flashback cut. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Remember to add style to this and to sort of flare your hands around, otherwise this wouldn't look quite as good. Remember that with time you'll pick up speed, so at first learn the mechanics of it and sort of walk through it slowly, and then you'll be doing it faster and faster, okay? So it'll just take a little bit of time. So I hope you guys enjoyed. That was Flashback. Alright, so Twitter. Twitter is an interesting little move that utilizes several different elements. I first came up with this move while practicing something in the mirror, and then I came up with this interesting little twirl that I later discovered to be exactly identical to Ling's. Ling is a female flourisher that I see around a lot on Technique, and she is very talented and she's got incredible work with that twirl, so I give her all the credit for this particular twirl. I think it's great, and I want you guys to check it out, and I hope you enjoy it. Let's go take a look. So let me give you guys a brief overview of how Twitter works. You're going to start off in Mechanics Grip, and then you're going to perform the Ling Thing twirl, because that's what it's called. No, I have no clue what it's called. So you're just going to perform the Ling twirl, and you're going to do the out jog, the bullet out jog. Remember to clear your finger, and then you're just going to balance the card right on top, like so. After you've shown the display for about 2 seconds, you're just going to collapse it and perform the angel slide right down onto it. So you're here, balance, and close. And that's essentially all that goes on. So let me give you guys a more detailed explanation of Twitter. Alright, so we're going to start out in Mechanics Grip. What you're going to do is push off just one card, and using your index and middle finger, you're just going to grip the card over here, and your thumb will rest on top. What that'll let you do is sort of twirl the card right there. And it's just a full 360-degree rotation. And I'm using my thumb to accomplish that. With a little bit of my wrist, it turns and it looks like a complete circle, because it is. So we're here, we count one card off, grip, and as we're rotating it, we're actually going to move our hand around this hand as the card is also rotating. So it's sort of a double rotation. There's a lot going on to there. So here and into there. That's the basic twirl that Twitter utilizes. Now after you completed one rotation, you can keep going with it. However, I like to do just one twirl around, and as it's about here underneath my hand, I'm going to perform the bullet out jog, and I'm here. Remember to clear your middle finger. So this provides a platform. So here, and you're just going to balance the card. So as I'm rotating, as it gets to the bottom, I bring the card over, and I'm just going to rest it on top of this card. Now I pause here for about 1 or 2 seconds, and then I collapse the move. And here's what you do. Here's what you do to close it. What you're going to do is you're going to place your hands, your fingers, right on the bottom of the card, right on the bottom of the platform, and then push up, 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 guided by your index finger. You're going to close it, and your thumb is going to push up on this card. Because if we collapse it like this, if you notice, we're going to have one face-up card left. We don't want that. We want to use our thumb to push up, and our thumb is going to push up on our fingers, and the card is going to rest there. What this will allow us to do is use Angel Slide to just slide the card down back onto the deck. So let me show you guys that one more time. So push one card over, twirl, 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 rotate your hand, out jog bullet, around, and here. So it's resting, and you're just going to collapse, close, thumb puts it on top, and the card slides down back onto the deck. So let me give you guys some slow-mos and different angles of Twitter. that was Twitter. I hope you guys enjoyed it. There's not much to say about it. It looks great from every angle, and I'd just like to give special thanks to Ling for coming up with such a wonderful twirl. Hope you guys enjoyed this move. Let's move on. Alright, so let's learn Bullet. Bullet is a cool way to twirl a card around the deck. It looks very ninja-esque, if that makes any sense. By that I mean it looks insane when done in speed. It looks like a whole bunch is going on when in reality it's a very simple move. It doesn't take much practice and it makes you look very skilled, so it's a great starting point. Another reason why it's so special is because there are so many things you can do with it. But enough talk, let's get into the good stuff. Alright, so let's briefly cover Bullet. What happens is you peel one card off from the top, and then it just basically rotates right around the deck and to the bottom. What? That's it, right? It looks kind of ridiculous once you've seen it in slow motion, but you better believe it. That's what happens. It's magic. It's a magical little blurry down, Charlie. No, I'm just kidding. But the reason why it looks so good and works so well is because of little things like tilting your wrist and then flicking the card out. But more on that in the next section. Let's get into it. Alright, so here is Bullet. We're going to start out by having sort of a tighter grip on the deck. Now, the reason we want to do that is because when you pull one card off the top of the deck, without that tighter grip, you might pull down more than just one card, alright? But just remember that throughout the whole move, you'll want to have your hand very loose and relaxed. The tighter it is, the worse it's going to get. So initially, you just want a tighter grip for that one card. Now, what the index finger is going to do is it's going to displace the top card about 1/4 of an inch from the deck, making it easier for our index finger to push down and pull one card off, alright? So we're in this position. Now if you'll notice, our middle finger gets in the way because ultimately we want to be perfectly parallel with the deck. So the way to clear this is once you pull this card down, your middle finger just extends and comes back in. So again, pull one card down, middle finger extends and comes back in. Okay. So from now, your index finger is just going to pivot this one card around the middle finger. So as it uncurls and pushes this card over, it's literally just going to pivot. It's going to pivot towards you. Okay? So it's pivoting, and right around the 90-degree mark, or around there, your middle finger is going to come out as your index finger curls in. So it's going to be this motion, like that. It's a very small motion, but what it does is it lets us pop the card right out. Okay? So again, pull down, pivot, it's going to pop, okay? And that's where the illusion happens. Now, as you pop, you'll want to tilt your wrist slightly towards you, and this sort of makes it look like more ninja-ish, if that's even a word, all right? So pull one card down, rotate and pivot, and pop. From here, all you're going to do is just bring the card to the top, and from here, your thumb just takes over and rotates it to the bottom. Okay? So in full speed, it looks like that. Now again, it looks a lot more than, initially when you start doing it. It looks like the card is really, doing all kinds of crazy things. But it really isn't. It's just a very stylistic move. So from here, though, what sells the illusion is the pivot and the fact that your arm and hand are stationary, okay? You don't want to move and deviate too much because then it loses effect. The reason it looks so good is because your hand is very stationary, so it looks like the card really dances around the deck by itself. So it's kind of like one of those things where a small motion here creates a larger motion elsewhere, so it's kind of like misdirection. So that's what makes this move really work as well as it does. So one more time throughout the whole thing. Tighter grip, index finger displaces, pulls this one card down, middle finger clears, comes back in, index finger pivots, your middle finger comes out as your index finger comes in, so here. And it's just going to pop, alright? As it pops, you tilt your wrist, bring this card back in, and your thumb takes over and rotates it back to the bottom, okay? And some of the things to keep in mind, again, are don't deviate from position, and keep your hand very loose and very relaxed throughout this whole thing. If you don't have your hand relaxed and loose, it's going to look very robotic. So as I'm doing this move, remember my hand is very loose and very relaxed, okay? So that was bullet. Let me give you a few more angles. Now, alternatively, you can actually do this move continuously, okay? So here's how it would look. Alright? So all I'm doing is exactly the same thing as bullet, except I'm doing it more than once. So here's a little exercise to help you understand the mechanics a little better. So once you sort of master this, getting into this position, from here, what you want to do is practice sort of the flick. And what happens here is, again, the index finger comes in while the middle finger comes out. So all it is kind of like this. It looks like a flutter. But you're doing this flutter as your fingers curl in. So here's the exercise. Getting into this position, you're going to curl your fingers in. You're going to extend, flick, and curl in. Extend, flick, and curl in. You're going to want to add sort of a wrist tilt as you extend. Okay? So this is what it's going to look like. So it's essentially bullet, just without the deck. Okay? So it's that. So this will help you understand the mechanics of the continuous bullet. Alright, so this concludes bullet. Keep in mind to have your arm stationary at all times. This will help you better sell the illusion of the dancing card around the deck. Now, another technique I want you guys to apply to everything that you do, magic and cardistry related, is to have a very loose grip on the deck when executing anything. When we first learn new things and new moves, we tend to have a very strong grip on the deck. And that's probably because we think that with a stronger grip, we put in more effort, so the more we'll get out of it. However, that's exactly the opposite, because if you have a stronger grip, you become more robotic and very choppy. If you have a smooth and sort of a loose grip, you're very fluid and things become very flowy, okay? So it's kind of like the equivalent of a boxer. If he's not light on his feet, then his opponent drags him down. Well, same thing with the hands. If you're not light on the hands, then your deck will drag you down. So just keep that in mind, alright? So that was Bullet. Practice it, use it, and enjoy it. Let's see. Oh, hey there. I didn't see you there. Cut. Alright, so welcome to the one concept. Now, what the one concept is it sort of utilizes one card to provide support, balance, and extra packets in an extra area for your one-handed cuts. It opens up so many doors to creating so much original material with just one hand. It's really crazy. So I created this concept out of the necessity to create something original with one hand. And I would like to share with you guys some of the things I came up with utilizing this concept, and I think you guys love it. This is my favorite concept on the whole DVD itself, so let's get right into it. Alright, so starting in Mechanics Grip, what you're going to do is reposition the deck as you would a Charlier cut and drop half the deck to your palm. Okay, so it's exactly like the Charlier cut. From here, you're going to reposition the thumb from the center to farther away from you, so right about right there. Not quite the corner, but just about half an inch away from it. Now what you do is your middle finger is going to slide this card right on down. It's going to keep sliding it, and your ring finger is just going to extend. So you're going to re-grip this card and reposition it so it's vertical or straight up, like that. So you're left in this position. So one more time. Mechanics Grip, reposition, thumb goes farther away from you, drop the deck, your middle finger reaches across and pulls one card down, your ring finger comes over and extends and re-grips this one card. Okay? So now from this position, what you're going to do is let go of the thumb pack, and it's going to rest on the one card, like that. Okay, so you're right here. You're going to tilt your wrist down, and using your thumb, you're just going to place this bottom packet right on top of the packet that's already balancing against the card. From here, you're just going to extend your hand and balance. So you're balancing this one packet on that one card. So it looks like the deck is balanced on the edge of your fingertips right here. Okay? Now to close, you're just going to grab the card underneath with your middle and your index finger. You're going to grab and sort of slide or roll the deck over. Place your thumb in such a fashion that you can rotate the card 360 degrees. So see that? My thumb is on the back side of this card. So it's going to let me rotate this card and place it underneath. And what I did there was I just curled my index finger underneath the deck and sort of extended the deck a little as I slid the card right down. Okay, so again, turn the card over, place, extend the deck, and back on top. So that's pretty much it. Let's go over that one more time. Starting off in Mechanics Grip, you're going to reposition, drop half the deck, and your thumb and index finger are going to grab these two packets. Remember to reposition your thumb to a little bit higher, not the center, but just about half an inch away. Alright, your middle finger is going to slide one card down, and your ring finger is going to pick it up and twist the card so it positions it right up vertically. Now your thumb pack is going to let go, and it's going to balance on that one card. Now this bottom packet is also going to be put right on top of this packet and balanced, and the whole deck is balanced at the edge of your fingertips. To close, grab the card, roll the deck around, pull up the card again, and it goes right underneath. Okay, so full speed. So let me show you how to twirl the card back onto the deck after you've balanced the whole packet. So after this position, after you've balanced the whole structure, you close by gripping the bottom card with your index and your middle finger. So your middle finger is farthest away from you and your index finger is closest to you. Okay? So you're just going to grip this card, roll the deck around. So I haven't done anything yet. And now place your thumb on the back and sort of twist the card about 180 degrees. Curl your index finger underneath and place the card right underneath the deck. Like that. Alright, so one more time. Grip. Roll the deck. Thumb goes on the back, twists the card, index finger curls, and the card slides right to the bottom. And that's it. Alright, so that was the introduction to the one concept. That was just the basic move and idea to get you guys started. Now let's get into some of the more advanced applications and things you can do with this concept. Let's get right into them. Alright, so this is the Charlier cut utilizing the one concept. What this does is sort of revive the Charlier cut. It makes it look twice as large and literally adds twice the amount of packets to it. So essentially, it's bringing sexy back to the Charlier cut. Let's get right into it. Alright, so there's two methods of doing this move. And I'm going to show you the first one, which is the way I like doing it. So let's check it out. We're going to start off in the position where we left off from the basic one concept, okay? So from here, all you're going to do is push down with your middle and your ring finger. You're just going to push down. Now what this does is, after you extend this card out, it's going to create a gap, sort of like a V, as you can see that. After this packet falls down, you can see that there is a great distance between these two packets. Now, this looks a lot prettier than if the packet was to, say, be right here. So without the finger push, it would look something like this. That's not what you want. See how there's a little bit of a distance and it tends to fall back onto itself. And that's not what you want. You want greater distance so that the area looks much larger, okay? So from here, to close, all you're going to do is let go with your thumb and the center packet just falls right there. Now with your card, you're just going to push this packet along and it's going to fall down. So all you're going to do is just that. So it falls right onto the deck. And to close it with one hand, all you're going to do is reposition the deck. So grab it with your index finger and your thumb, and you're just going to extend the card as far away from you as possible and rotate this card onto itself. Bring your index finger out and bring it onto the deck and flip it back onto its side. Alright? So one more time. You're going to drop, extend. Remember to push the fingers so it extends the card out further. Let the packet fall. So just release pressure with your thumb. So all you're doing is just this. Let the packet fall. Pause for effect. These packets collapse. And this card is turned over. And that's about it. Now let me get into a second version of how you can do this move. Alright, so here's the second method for executing this cut. So it's exactly the same as the first method, except once you get into the setup, you're literally going to execute the Charlier cut. So you're just going to push this packet up, clear the packet, let it fall, and close and proceed from there as you would with the first method. Alright? That's all there really is to it. Now if you'll notice, this top packet right here is the top part of the deck. So essentially, it retains the top stack if you wanted it to be, false with just that top stack. So keep that in mind. And if you wanted it to be a real cut, all you'd have to do is, instead of letting the packet clear, you're just going to let this packet fall first and then clear the packet. And this eliminates the top stack retention, and it changes the cut and it becomes a real cut. Alright, so let's get into a few different angles. so that was the Charlier cut utilizing the one concept. I hope you guys liked it. Now, some of the things to keep in mind are remember to balance and sort of practice this move, because at first when you learn it, you want to move all your fingers together as a unit, and with time that'll go away and your fingers will begin to get used to this move and sort of work individually, so that if you want to move your index finger, your index finger is going to move, not your pinky and middle finger. My favorite method of doing this move is just the display without the actual Charlier cut, because I think it flows smoother, faster, and just prettier. So this is the method I like to use. Here, close, and there. So that's my favorite method. You guys choose your own style and how you want to do the move. So that's about it, and that's all there is to it. Let's move on. Alright, so welcome to the rebounding concept. Now, the concept of rebounding is where you flick a card, it travels away from you, and then it hits a wall, and then comes back to you, okay? And it looks really neat, and it's basically everything that you can do in the air, you can do with this concept and idea, okay? So I'm not sure why anyone would not use this thing, and it shows you for how versatile you are as a card artist. It shows your artistic side, because here you can't make the excuse that you don't wear jewelry. And the reason I'm bringing that up is because I try to use everything around me, coins or your jewelry, my watch, my bracelet, just sort of incorporate it into the whole aspect of cardistry. I also use the concept of rebounding, where objects hit against the wall, and it just shows you for how well-rounded you are. And it especially looks great for when you're on stage, and it looks great for when you're on video as well. So anyway, enough talk, let's delve into the concept of rebounding. Alright, so welcome to the basic card flick, which utilizes the rebound concept. This is one of my favorite things to do because it's easy, it's simple, it's versatile, and it's so much fun to practice and perform, okay? Now, the only thing you're going to have to master is basically the thumb propulsion. Once you got that down, you're ready to go and learn this. Now, I'm going to briefly cover this because it's a very simple move, and it's essentially the thumb propulsion. So I'll try to keep everything in frame. I know I don't have a lot of space to work with, so let me show you the best angles for this. Here's what happens. Essentially, you're just going to perform the thumb propulsion. The card is going to fly out, and it's going to bounce against the wall and then come back to you. You can either catch it with your other hand or on top of the deck. So it's going to look something like this. It's going to ricochet, and you're going to catch it. So it bounces off the wall and then comes back. That's a very easy move. It pretty much works every time unless you hit a bad angle or you're using fabric like I am. Fabric, the card isn't going to bounce too far away, and that's not what you want. You want a hard surface so that the card bounces far away. You'll want a discernible distance between yourself and the wall, because if you're too close to the wall, especially on stage, it doesn't look quite well, because you might as well be doing the regular thumb propulsion, because they can't see that you're even hitting the wall. So you'll want that distance. You'll want several feet away. It'll look much better that way. Now remember, if you're too close to the wall and you ricochet the card, it's going to bounce way out there, because the power and the momentum, the force of the card hitting that wall so close is going to cause it to just ricochet very far off. So you'll want to not get too close because of that reason. You'll also not want to be too far away from the wall, because it loses power and momentum over time. So if you're too far away, the card isn't going to come back to you very far. Okay, so you're not going to be able to catch it. So you'll want that perfect distance between yourself and the wall to where they can see what you're doing, but that you'll perfectly be able to get that card flick right back to where you're standing. And it looks really neat. Again, it's one of my favorite things to do, and I'll be covering more things and more advanced material with it in the more advanced volumes of Genesis, okay? So look forward to that. But for now, I just want you to practice that, get used to it, and sort of have fun with it and play around with it and see what you can come up with. And later on, we'll see, and I'll show you some of the things that I've come up with it. So anyway, that was the rebound card flick. I hope you guys use it, practice it, enjoy it. Again, it's a great move for when you're on stage, and it's a real worker. So that was the rebound card flick. so the winged concept, this one is very interesting. What it is sort of a platform that is a one-handed fan usually, or any other kind of fan that cards can be manipulated on and controlled. So it's a really cool idea that sort of generates many displays and many possibilities of cuts, even aerials. That's the cool part about it. So I want you guys to take this idea and concept and play with it, and I'm sure that you'll be able to come up with many ideas and cuts and displays. So I hope you guys enjoy it, and let me show you some of the things that are possible with this concept. Let's get into it right now. Alright, so here comes the winged triad formation, which is a surprising way to make a triangle in the air. Now I included this technique to sort of help you better familiarize yourself with the winged concept, and it's a pretty neat move in itself. So with that said, let's get right to learning the winged triad formation. Alright, so make sure you've mastered the revolution cut as well as the one-handed fan. So you're going to start off by making a one-handed fan with about half the deck. Okay? You're going to execute the revolution cut. You're going to drop half, rotate half. You're not going to quite close the packet. You're just going to leave it open, okay, like this. Your fan comes over, and you're going to insert the top packet somewhere in the center of the fan. So you just kind of push it in, and don't push it in too far, or else the cards, or else the packet won't glide out. But essentially what happens is, you're going to let loose with some of the pressure. So right now I'm sort of applying a lot of pressure with my thumb, but you're going to let go, and you see how it sort of unbuckles? The fan sort of uncurls. And what that does is it releases pressure here, and as it does that, you're going to sort of whip your hand around. It's not so much of a whipping motion as it is a guiding motion. So you're just going to guide the packet right inside. And what happens is you're just going to open this, the bottom packet, the left, the one that's left, and you're just going to open it inside a mouth, like that. So you've just created a little slot, so when the packet falls, you're just going to catch it with your thumb and your other fingers. But here's what happens. Here's the actual motion. I'm going to do it without catching it inside the triangle, but essentially the momentum of it sort of makes the packet revolve around the fan. Alright, so it's fairly easy. Catching it inside the triangle, however, will take some practice. And what you do is, again, make the mouth and split it in about halves. Okay, so you're just going to pivot and catch. Okay, so again, all I've done was just sort of rotate my hand. And remember, it's not so much of a whipping motion as it is sort of a guiding one. So don't overdo it, okay? So to close, after you formed your triangle, you guide, form. You're going to close by letting the packet outward. It's just going to collapse. Thumb packet collapses. And the fan, you're just going to close. So you brought the fingers together, and you just rotate this packet back on top of the deck. And that is the surprise winged triad formation. Let me show you that from a few more angles. So I've shown you how to do the surprise triad formation using the wings concept. Now I want to show you a completely different move that uses, for the most part, the same technique, okay? And what happens is, you're going to make a one-handed fan, insert the remaining packet, whip the hand around, it's going to go in the air, it's going to spin, and you're going to catch it with that fan underneath, okay? So it's essentially the same technique, and here's what it's going to look like. You're going to make a one-handed fan with a third of the deck. You're going to insert the packet right inside the center. You can insert it farther away from you if you wanted to, which will give you more of a spin. So if you wanted to, you can do that. Generally though, I stick to the center. So you make your one-handed fan, you insert the packet inside, and notice how my fan is buckled right now? Well, as you whip, you unbuckle it, so you straighten it out, and it's going to go spinning in the air. As it does, your three fingers come underneath and snatch it in the air, okay? So it's going to look something like this. So you insert, you spin, you catch, and see I've caught it right underneath, and then you just square up as you would normally, and that is the aerial throw using the wings concept, okay? So it's a little bit different, virtually the same techniques, and I've included it in the same section as they are, for the most part, very similar, okay? So I hope you guys practice it and use it and enjoy it. So that was about it for the winged triad formation. Not much to say about it. It's a fairly easy move. Just remember to guide your hand inside the mouth packet, and that will make your time learning this move much easier. So I hope you liked it.
Hello there, my name is Alejandro Portela, and I'm the man behind the Curso.info. I'm gonna take you back to my studio now to teach you a little move that I created back when I first saw Andre's one concept. It's just a little touch in the opener that makes it more dynamic, and I'm sure you will like it. Here's a little experiment using one concept and the first phase of my Blanco cut. I like to call it the Blanco one. So here's a little tip. You always want your middle finger to keep contact with the corner of the spinning packet up until the one has been formed right there. You can take it out. This way you prevent the cards from falling down or leaving it back at the same square. Okay, so this is it for now. I hope you play around with the move so you can come up with your more complex and personal variations. My name is Alejandro Portela and this has been The Blanco One.
Hi guys, and welcome to Genesis. I'm Dave Buck, and I'm going to teach you the Carnahan fan, which Andre uses in his Impossible cut. I first came up with it while having juice with Paul Wilson, and for the longest time I didn't have a name for it, and I would practice it, and eventually I showed it to Joe Carnahan when we were working on Smokin' Aces, and he loved it, and that's how he decided to use me instead of Dan for the scene in the movie. So I named it after Joe Carnahan. That's why it's called the Carnahan fan. And I'm going to show it to you now. The Carnahan fan is a quick open and close of a large circular fan, done with one hand. Let me show you what it looks like. That's the Carnahan fan. Now let's get into the explanation. First learning the Carnahan fan, I recommend using only half the deck. This will just make it easier to both open and close the fan. Let me show you what I mean. So if you use the full deck, there are lots of cards to spread, and it gets heavy right here, and you're only holding the fan between your index finger and edge of your thumb. So the cards have a tendency to fall. They're too heavy. That's why it's best to use half the deck. And it still looks the same. You have a nice big spread of cards. They see all the pips. That's pretty. So to start out, hold the cards in dealer's grip. Hold them casually and loose. When you're ready to do the fan, your index finger curls underneath and your thumb comes around on top. For now, your fingers just stay at the side. You don't want the cards too low or too far out. This won't make the fan possible. That's why you want to start in dealer's grip. Curl the finger in, thumb comes on top. Pay close attention to the position of this outer edge and the position of the thumb. When you're ready to execute the fan, these three fingers extend, and you want to extend them out as far as possible. However, that's not the first action. What you're going to do is wrap your index finger around your thumb as these fingers extend. So those two actions are happening simultaneously. So I can show you this with two cards. Let's see if you hold them in dealer's grip. Just imagine this is a deck. Curl your index finger underneath. Your thumb extends across the top. Now, in the action of extending these three fingers, the index finger extends out and curls around the back of the thumb. Just imagine you have a spread of cards or a fan of cards in this area right here. So I'll do this again. So notice the index finger is curled in, it extends out, and then over and around the thumb as it curls back in, creating a nice large fan. So if we add some cards and do the same thing, you can see the spread happens almost automatically with those actions. Now, you will have to figure out the exact grip of the thumb and the index finger in relation to each other in order for this to work best for you. However, I find that if my thumb is parallel with that outer edge of the deck and my index finger is curled as far as it can in, like that, so the nail is touching the base of your palm, or the base of the finger, that'll give you a nice big fan of cards. So from here, you get that action. Now, some problems you will have with this at first is catching this edge right here on the fingers. At first it won't be able to pass those fingers. You'll have a difficulty getting it past those fingers. One way to prevent this is to do the fan quickly. And what this does is it's basically turning over the deck like so before it's fanning. So the deck is still squared. Once it passes this middle finger, that's when the cards begin to fan. You can also try doing it with less cards at first if that helps. So just like 12 to 15 cards. Just experiment with what works best for you initially until you get the action down of fanning the cards. Now when you have a fan, to close it, you're reversing the actions. So you have your fingers extended. As your index finger curls back in, or extends back out, it goes underneath the thumb and then curls back in, closing the fan, as these three fingers push the deck together to square it. Let me get some more cards. So the fan is open. Notice my middle finger extends way out and is on this edge. This is going to also allow for support when closing the fan. And again, this is also one of those things that relies on gravity. As you can see, it's almost impossible to do slow. You really need the inertia from the open to create the nice large fan, and the inertia from the close to bring the cards together. So in like a switchblade action, the fan is open and then closed. And that's the Carnahan fan. That's it, that's the Carnahan fan. Like I said, start with a small block, like 15 cards, and build your way up to a full deck. Also remember that it's heavily reliant on gravity. You need the inertia from the fan opening and closing in order for the cards to stay together. That's it. I hope you guys use it. I hope you use it in Andre's cut and on its own. It's a great flourish. I love it. Thank you.
Alright, so we finally got through the first volume of Genesis. I'm glad we made it this far. Now with all things, especially with cardistry, you'll have the most difficult time when you first start. And that's simply because you're not quite used to things. And that's okay, because with time and practice, all that will go away. So the biggest thing I can tell you is keep your eyes on the prize and do not give up. So this was the first volume of Genesis. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Practice it, use it, and most of all, have fun with it. I'll see you soon.